Asterisk Story 1, The Frozen Broadcast. The radio had been playing my voice for the last 47 minutes, and I hadn't said a word. Not just similar to my exact voice, down to the way I cleared my throat before speaking, the slight whistle on my S sounds, even the nervous laugh I did when I was scared. Which I was. Terrified, actually, as I listened to myself describe in perfect detail what I was going to do in the next 10 minutes and how badly it was going to end. My name is Robert Hayes, 42 years old, and I'd been hauling freight across the Dalton Highway for 6 seasons. The Dalton is 514 miles of pure Alaskan brutality connecting Fairbanks to the oil fields at Prudhoe Bay. And in February, when the temperature hits 50 below and the sun barely kisses the horizon, it's about as close to another planet as you can get while still being on Earth. I'd seen caribou frozen mid-stride, their legs snapped off by other trucks passing by. I'd watched the aurora borealis dance so violently it looked like the sky was having a seizure. But I'd never heard myself on the CB radio narrating my own death. "Robert's going to check his right mirror in about 30 seconds, my voice said through the static. He's going to see something in the distance. He'll think it's another truck at first, but it's not. It's never another truck out here." I kept my eyes forward, knuckles white on the steering wheel. My 2019 Kenworth W900 was loaded with 72,000 pounds of drilling equipment, and the ice road beneath me was groaning with every rotation of my wheels. The thermometer read -53 degrees Fahrenheit. My breath crystallized in the air despite the heater blasting at full power, forming tiny ice fractals that caught the green glow of my dashboard lights. "He's fighting it now," my voice continued, "but he'll look. They always look." I looked, God help me, I looked. In my right mirror, approximately 200 yards back, something was following me. It moved like a truck, had the general shape of a truck, but the proportions were wrong, too tall. The cab stretched upward into the darkness like a throat, and instead of headlights, there were windows. Dozens of windows, maybe hundreds, each one illuminated from within by a weak, pulsing light. And in every window, I could see a silhouette, a person, standing perfectly still, all facing forward, all watching me. "That's not the worst part," the radio said. "The worst part is when he realizes those people in the windows are all him. Every version of Robert Hayes who made it this far, every timeline, every choice, all of them ended up in those windows." My foot eased off the accelerator. The engine's rumble dropped to a lower pitch, and I could hear ice cracking beneath my tires like bones snapping. The thing behind me didn't slow down. It maintained its exact distance, 200 yards, as if we were connected by an invisible tether. I grabbed the CB radio microphone with a shaking hand. "This is Robert Hayes, northbound at mile marker 317. Does anyone copy?" My voice answered immediately from the speaker. "He's going to try calling for help now. It won't work. There hasn't been anyone else on this road for 3 days. The storm saw to that. The storm that doesn't exist on any weather report. The storm that only forms around certain trucks at certain times when certain conditions are met. Conditions that Robert met exactly at mile marker 289. "What the fuck did I do?" I shouted at the radio. The static cleared completely and my voice came through with crystal clarity. He stopped. At mile marker 289, Robert Hayes stopped his truck to urinate on the side of the road at 2:47 a.m. While he was outside, he saw something in the snow. A metal box about the size of a briefcase with Russian lettering on the side. He should have left it there. Soviet-era equipment litters this highway, old survey markers, abandoned drilling samples, forgotten experiments. But Robert opened it. I had opened it. I remembered now, the memory flooding back with nauseating clarity. Inside the box had been a radio transmitter, ancient and corroded, still somehow powered by a half-frozen battery. There'd been a microphone attached. And like an idiot, like a complete fucking idiot, I'd pressed the transmit button and said hello. That's when it started listening, the radio said. The road. The Dalton Highway isn't just a road, Robert. It's a nervous system, and you just introduced yourself directly into its brain stem. The temperature inside my cab dropped 15 degrees in as many seconds. My breath came out in thick white clouds. Ice began forming on the inside of my windshield, creeping across the glass in fractal patterns that looked disturbingly like neural networks, like synapses firing. I cranked the defroster, but it did nothing. The patterns kept spreading, and I realized, they were spelling words. The windows in my mirrors multiplied. The impossible truck behind me was growing, expanding sideways, and each new window that appeared contained another version of me. Some were screaming. Some were beating against the glass. Some had their faces pressed so hard against the windows that their features were flattened and distorted. One of them was on fire. Mile marker 318, my voice narrated calmly. Robert's going to notice his odometer now. He's been driving for 13 minutes since mile marker 317. At 60 miles per hour, he should be at least 13 miles down the road. But the marker coming up says 318. 1 mile in 13 minutes. The road is stretching. It's keeping him here. It wants to study him. The marker flashed past my window, confirming the impossibility. My speedometer read 62 miles per hour. My engine was performing normally, but the distance wasn't matching up. The laws of physics had become negotiable. I floored the accelerator. The Kenworth surged forward, engine roaring, the load behind me swaying dangerously on the ice. 70 miles per hour. 80. The truck shook and rattled, my teeth chattering from the vibration. The thing behind me matched my speed exactly, maintaining that 200-yard gap. 83 miles per hour now, the radio said. On ice, in the dark, Robert's going to lose control in approximately 12 seconds. The road is going to turn sharply to the left, even though this stretch of the Dalton Highway is straight for the next 40 miles. The road is rewriting itself. It can do that. It's done it before. No, I said, gripping the wheel harder. No, that's not. The road turned left. It shouldn't have. I'd driven this route 100 times. This was the straightest section of the entire highway, a frozen ribbon cutting through absolute nothingness. But reality bent, and suddenly there was a curve, sharp and cruel, appearing in my headlights like a trapdoor opening beneath a gallows. I yanked the wheel left, the trailer jackknifed. I felt the distinctive lurch of tires losing contact with the ground, the sickening moment of weightlessness before a rollover. The world rotated. The horizon became vertical. My cargo shifted with the sound of thunder, 72,000 pounds of metal equipment tearing free from its chains. But I didn't flip. The truck slammed back down onto all 18 wheels with a bone-jarring impact that shattered my right side mirror and cracked my windshield. I was facing backward now, directly toward the thing that had been following me. It had stopped. All those windows, all those versions of me staring out. And then, in perfect unison, every single one of them lifted their right hand and pointed at me. This is where it gets interesting, my voice said softly through the radio. Robert can keep running or Robert can listen. The road wants him to know something. The road has been trying to tell every driver who touches that transmitter the same thing, but none of them listen. They panic. They run. They end up in the windows. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely hold the microphone. What? What does it want to tell me? You're not on the Dalton Highway anymore. You haven't been since you pressed that transmit button. That was the exit. This is somewhere else. Somewhere that runs parallel to the real road, separated by a membrane so thin that sometimes, under the right conditions, someone can punch through. You punched through, and now you're in the place where the road dreams. The ice beneath my truck was becoming transparent. I could see down through it, down past where the permafrost should be, down into depths that shouldn't exist. There were things moving down there. Massive things with too many wheels, with cabs that extended into impossible dimensions. Ghost trucks, dream trucks, trucks that had been driving these phantom roads for decades. Their drivers long dead but still gripping the wheel, still hauling loads to destinations that didn't exist. The only way back is to reach mile marker 322, my voice said. The road stretches, but it doesn't stretch equally. Some markers are closer than others. 322 is 100 yards ahead. Robert has to drive toward the thing in the windows. He has to drive through it. I looked at the monstrosity ahead of me, at the hundreds of windows, and the hundreds of me's trapped inside, pointing, screaming, burning. I looked at the ice beneath me growing more transparent by the second. I looked at my hands and noticed for the first time that my right hand had begun to fade, becoming translucent, the steering wheel visible through my own flesh. "He's becoming part of the road," the radio explained. "The longer he stays, the more he integrates. In approximately 4 minutes, Robert Hayes will cease to be a driver and will become part of the infrastructure. He'll join the others in the windows, and the road will use his voice to call the next person. It's always hungry, it's always expanding." 3 minutes and 43 seconds left. I put the truck in gear and drove forward directly at the impossible vehicle with its cargo of trapped souls. My foot was steady on the accelerator, both hands on the wheel. The distance closed, 100 yards, 50, 25. The windows rushed toward me, and I could see the faces clearly now. Some were mine, but some weren't. Other drivers, men and women I'd never met, all screaming the same word. I couldn't hear them through the glass, but I could read their lips. The impact never came. I passed through the thing like it was made of smoke. For a fraction of a second, I was inside it, surrounded by those windows, and I could hear all of them screaming. Thousands of voices, maybe millions, all trapped in this nightmare road, all trying to warn the next victim. The sound was so loud I thought my eardrums would rupture. Then I was through. Mile marker 322 flashed past my window. The ice beneath me became solid again. The temperature rose abruptly, the heater finally catching up. My right hand solidified, fully opaque once more. The radio went silent for the first time in 56 minutes. I drove another 300 miles to Prudhoe Bay in absolute silence, my radio off, my hands trembling, my eyes fixed on the road ahead. When I arrived at the depot, the supervisor told me I was 2 days late. I'd thought it had been one night. My truck's GPS showed I'd traveled 9,417 miles between marker 289 and Prudhoe Bay. The actual distance was 228 miles. I quit the next morning, sold my truck within a week, moved to Phoenix, where it never drops below freezing, where there's no ice, no snow, no empty roads cutting through endless darkness. But sometimes, late at night, I still hear my voice on the radio. Not the radio in my house, I don't own one. The radio in my mind, still narrating, still describing what I'm going to do in the next 10 minutes, still trying to warn me about something I haven't seen yet, something that followed me home from that phantom highway. Mile marker 322 wasn't the exit. It was just another room in a house with infinite doors. And I can hear something walking through the halls, getting closer to my room, one marker at a time. Asterisk story 2, the passenger manifest. When Judith Kowalski picked up the hitchhiker at mile marker 67 on the Trans-Labrador Highway, she noticed his eyes didn't reflect her headlights properly. Instead of the usual bright shine of a tapetum lucidum, that animal gleam you see in wildlife at night, his eyes absorbed the light completely, like looking into two holes punched through reality. She almost drove past him. She wishes she had. "Name's Marcus," he said as he climbed into her Volvo VN. His voice sounded like it was coming from the bottom of a well. "I appreciate this. Been walking since last Thursday." Today was Monday. Judith had been driving commercial routes through Labrador for 11 years, and she knew every gas station, every rest stop, every place where someone could feasibly survive between settlements. There was nowhere to walk from, nothing but 500 miles of boreal forest, black spruce, and caribou. "Where you headed?" she asked, pulling back onto the highway. Snow fell in thick curtains, her headlights barely penetrating 15 feet ahead. "Same place as you," Marcus said, "the Goose Bay Depot." She hadn't mentioned her destination. The manifest paperwork sitting on her dashboard was face down. Her company logo on the trailer would tell him the company, but not the specific route. "Lucky guess," she said, eyes flicking to her mirror. In the reflection, his seat appeared empty. But she could feel his weight, see him in her peripheral vision, smell the wet wool of his jacket. Only the mirror showed vacancy. "Not luck," Marcus said. "I've been in this truck before. Well, not this exact truck, but close enough. A Tuesday version, maybe a Thursday, definitely a Saturday once." He leaned forward, and she heard his knees crack with a sound like green wood splitting. "You ever think about how many versions of yourself might be driving this same route, right now, all stacked on top of each other like sheets of paper?" "Can't say I have," Judith replied, checking her speed. 50 kilometers per hour in the snow, hazards on, maintaining distance from the non-existent traffic ahead. There was never traffic on the Trans-Labrador in February. That's what she told herself. But her hands were sweating despite the cold. "You're thinking about it now, though," Marcus said. "And that's the problem. Once you start thinking about it, you can feel them, all the other Judiths. The one who didn't pick me up, she's about 20 kilometers ahead, wondering why she fee. Elle's guilty, the one who stopped for coffee at the Churchill Falls station. She's behind us and she's got a different passenger. Something worse than me." Judith's CB radio crackled to life. "Northbound Volvo, this is southbound Peterbilt. You got your ears on." She grabbed the microphone. "Yeah, I copy. What's your 20? "Just past mile marker 93, heading your way. Roads are getting bad, real bad. You see anything weird up ahead?" Judith glanced at her odometer. Mile marker 74, 19 kilometers between them, closing distance. "Define weird," she said. Static filled the cab for a long moment. Then the voice came back, but it was wrong. It was her voice. "Judith, this is Judith. I'm in the southbound Peterbilt. I picked up a hitchhiker named Marcus 3 days ago, and I can't get him to leave. Every time I stop the truck, every time I reach a destination, the road just keeps going. I've been driving for 72 hours straight. The odometer stopped working somewhere around 15,000 kilometers. Don't let him tell you about the other versions. Once you know, you can't unknow." Marcus laughed. It sounded like wind whistling through a cracked window. "She figured it out faster than most. Smart woman. All the Judiths are smart. That's why the road likes you." "Get out," Judith said, hand moving to the door lock release for the passenger side. "Can't, not until we reach the split. Mile marker 119. That's where the road branches, where all the different versions separate. Some Judiths go left, some go right, some go straight, and one, just one every time, goes down. There is no split at 119. Judith's voice was steady, but her heart was hammering. "I've driven this route 200 times. It's a straight shot to Goose Bay." "In your version, maybe, but you're not in your version anymore. Haven't been since mile marker 67. That's the permeable point. That's where passengers like me can cross over." Marcus reached into his jacket and pulled out a notebook. The pages were yellowed, water-damaged, filled with dense handwriting in dozens of different styles. "Every driver who picks me up writes in this. Their observations, what they see, what happens at the split. You want to know the really interesting part." Judith didn't answer. She focused on the road, on the white lines barely visible beneath the accumulating snow, on the rhythmic thump of her wiper blades. "They all write the same thing," Marcus continued. "Word for word, same observations, same fears, same realization that they're not on the Trans-Labrador anymore, they're on something older, something that existed before humans put asphalt over it. An aboriginal road, a spirit road. The kind the Innu warned about in their stories, the paths that the caribou spirits use during migration, the routes that don't appear on any map because they're not fixed to geography. They're fixed to intent." Mile marker 81 passed. The snow was falling upward now. Small flakes defying gravity drifting toward the sky like inverted stars. Judith blinked hard, assuming it was an optical illusion, fatigue playing tricks. But no, the snow was definitely falling up, and her truck was leaving tracks in it, tracks that glowed faintly blue in her mirrors. "You're seeing it now," Marcus said softly. "The road revealing itself. It does that when you get close to the split. It wants you to understand what's about to happen. It's not cruel, it's just particular about who continues and who doesn't." "What decides?" Judith heard herself ask, even though she didn't want to know. "The passenger manifest." He held up the notebook, flipped it open to a blank page near the back. Except it wasn't blank. Text was appearing, writing itself in real time, in handwriting that was unmistakably Judith's own cursive. "Judith Marie Kowalski, 47 years old, commercial driver's license class 1A, 11 years experience on the Trans-Labrador route. Divorced. 2 children, both adults, minimal contact. Picked up hitchhiker at 23:47 hours, mile marker 67. Current mental state, elevated anxiety, moderate skepticism, emerging acceptance. Probability of left turn, 23%. Probability of right turn, 31%. Probability of straight continuation, 38%. Probability of down, 8%. 8%, Marcus said. "That's higher than average. Most drivers are at 2 or 3%. But you've been thinking about it, haven't you? About how easy it would be to just keep driving, to never stop. To see where the road really goes when you stop obeying all the rules about destinations and schedules and returning home." Judith's hands tightened on the wheel. "You're not real, you're a hallucination. Carbon monoxide leak in the cabin, or I'm having a stroke, or... Oh, I'm real, just not the way you understand real. I'm the part of the road that asks questions. The other passengers, the ones in the other trucks, in the other versions, TH. I are different aspects. Some test courage, some test guilt. I test curiosity, and Judith, you're very, very curious." The radio crackled again. Multiple voices this time overlapping, all of them Judith's voice in various states of distress. "Don't go straight. The left turn has a rest stop, you can escape there. Right turn leads to a place where the road ends, you'll be safe. Down is where you want to go, down is where the real road is, down is where we all end up anyway." Mile marker 100 appeared in her headlights. 19 kilometers to the split. The upward falling snow was forming patterns now, symbols in languages she didn't recognize, geometric shapes that hurt to look at directly. Her truck was maintaining speed, but she could feel the engine laboring, as if she were climbing an incline even though her instruments showed level terrain. The Innu called it Meshkanaw *, the road of spirits, Marcus said. They said the caribou herds follow it during migration, traveling not through space but through the layers of reality. Hunters who followed the herds too closely would sometimes slip between layers, end up on spirit roads, and have to make choices. Left, right, straight, or down. Most chose poorly. "What's poor?" Judith asked. "Depends on your definition of existence." Mile marker 105. Her fuel gauge was dropping impossibly fast, from 3/4 to half in the space of a kilometer. The temperature outside had risen to 7 degrees Celsius according to her sensor, but ice was forming on her windshield from the inside, creeping across the glass in crystalline patterns that looked like road maps. Maps of routes that didn't exist. Maps of the places she could go. "Tell me about down," she said. Marcus was quiet for a moment. When he spoke again, his voice had changed. Multiple voices speaking in unison, male and female, young and old. Down is where the road goes when it's tired of being a road. Down is recursion. Down is the place where all the versions of you meet and merge. Down is forever. 98% of drivers who go down never come back. The 2% who do come back wrong, changed. They can see all the versions simultaneously. They can't distinguish between what is and what could be. They drive forever, picking up passengers, trying to warn people, but the warnings become part of the trap. "You're one of them," Judith said. It wasn't a question. "I'm all of them, every driver who went down and came back. I'm the collective passenger, the voice of the road, the question that every version of this journey asks. And Judith, the road is asking you now, do you want to know? Do you want to see the other versions of yourself, the choices you didn't make, the lives you didn't live? Because that's what down offers, complete knowledge, total awareness, the ability to experience every possible version of your existence simultaneously." Mile marker 115. The road ahead was beginning to shimmer, to split into overlapping images like a photograph taken with a shaking camera. She could see 4 different roads now, all occupying the same space, all slightly offset from each other. Left curved into deeper darkness. Right seemed to lead toward distant lights. Straight continued into the snow. Down was opening beneath her front wheels like a mouth. 4 kilometers, Marcus said. "You need to decide. The split doesn't wait. If you don't choose, the road chooses for you, and the road always chooses down." Judith's mind raced. She thought about her ex-husband, about her children who called twice a year out of obligation, about the empty apartment waiting for her in happy Valley Goose Bay, about the 11 years of driving the same route, seeing the same landmarks, living the same day over and over with slight variations. She thought about the other Judiths, the ones who'd made different choices. Were they happier? Were they more fulfilled? Did any version of her actually matter if there were infinite versions? Mile marker 117. The down route was wider now, more defined. She could see into it, see the spiral descending into depths that seemed to have their own light source, a pale blue glow like deep ocean bioluminescence. And she could see trucks down there. Dozens of them, hundreds, all driving in perfect formation, all following some incomprehensible pattern, all with passengers in the right seat pointing the way forward. "The notebook," she said. "Show me what I write." Marcus flipped forward several pages. The handwriting was hers, but the words were already there, already written, describing everything that had happened and everything that was about to happen. Describing her reaching for the wheel. Describing her making her choice. Mile marker 118. The text in the notebook was changing, updating in real time, branching into 4 different narratives depending on which way she turned. In the left narrative, she escaped, but spent the rest of her life haunted by what she'd seen, unable to convince anyone, slowly going mad. In the right narrative, she found a rest stop that existed outside of time and stayed there forever, safe but static, never aging, never leaving. In the straight narrative, she continued driving and the road eventually released her at mile marker 119 as if nothing had happened, but she'd be different, hollowed out, a person-shaped void. In the down narrative. The down narrative had no ending. It just continued, page after page after page, describing driving and driving and driving, seeing everything, understanding everything, becoming part of the road itself, joining Marcus and all the others, asking questions of the next drivers forever. Mile marker 119. The split appeared in her headlights, not a fork in the road that would have been too simple. This was a fracture in reality, 4 roads occupying the same space, visible simultaneously, each one calling to her with the weight of destiny. Her hands moved on the wheel, left, right, straight, down, the choice was hers. But as her tires crossed the threshold of mile marker 119, she realized something Marcus hadn't mentioned, something that the notebook hadn't written. There was a 5th option. The option that no one chose because it wasn't visible until you were right at the moment of splitting. The option that appeared between the 4 roads, in the spaces where they didn't quite connect. Stop. She slammed on the brakes. All 18 wheels locked. The Volvo skidded across the shimmering intersection of impossible roads, momentum carrying her forward even as friction tried to halt her, the trailer jackknifing at a 45-degree angle. She slid across left, across right, across straight, across down, and came to rest perfectly in the center, touching none of them. The engine died. The lights went out. Absolute silence filled the cab. Marcus was gone. The passenger seat was empty. The notebook lay on the floor, open to her page. The text was changing, rewriting itself frantically, trying to account for this new variable. Error, 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 unscheduled stop, protocol violation, subject has. Judith opened her door and stepped out into the intersection. The snow had stopped falling, both up and down. She stood at the center of 5 roads. She could see the 5th one now, the one that appeared when you refused all the other choices, the road that ran perpendicular to everything else. It was narrow, barely wide enough for a person, and it was made of light. She started walking down it, away from her truck, away from the 4 impossible choices, away from mile marker 119. Behind her, she heard engines starting. Dozens of them, hundreds, all the trucks in the down route, all rising up toward the surface, converging on the spot where she'd stopped. But they couldn't follow her. This road wasn't for vehicles. It was for people who walked away. The last thing she heard was Marcus's voice, distorted by distance and disbelief, echoing across the impossible geography. She wasn't supposed to get out. They never get out. That's not in the manifest. Judith Marie Kowalski walked for 3 days along that light road. When she finally emerged, she was in Nova Scotia, 700 miles from where she'd started, with no memory of how she'd crossed that distance. Her truck was found abandoned at mile marker 119 by a maintenance crew who reported nothing unusual about the location. The notebook was never found. She never drove commercially again. But sometimes, late at night, she gets calls on her disconnected cell phone. The caller ID shows her own number. When she answers, she hears the sound of an engine running, a CB radio crackling with voices, and someone who sounds exactly like her asking, "Which way did you go? Which way did you choose? I'm at the split and I can't see the 5th road. How do I see it? How do I stop?" She never answers. She just listens to herself asking over and over the question that has no answer in the manifest. The question the road doesn't want asked. The question that breaks the pattern. How do I leave? Story 3, The Wait Station. Thomas Chen's trailer was 4,000 pounds overweight when he pulled into the port of entry station at the Idaho-Montana border. And by the time he pulled out 17 minutes later, He was 6,000 pounds underweight asterisk, and he hadn't unloaded a single item. The scale operator, a woman whose name tag read EMILY, but whose face Thomas couldn't quite bring into focus no matter how hard he tried, handed him his paperwork with a smile that had too many teeth. "Safe travels," she said. "Don't stop until you reach the other side." "Other side of what?" Thomas asked. But Emily had already turned away, attending to a truck that wasn't there, speaking to a driver who cast no shadow. The sun was setting as Thomas pulled back onto Interstate 15. His 2021 Freightliner Cascadia handling differently now, the steering loose and floating, like driving through water instead of air. His cargo was medical supplies, at least that's what the manifest said. Insulin, syringes, hospital equipment. 17 pallets, 64,000 pounds total, bound for Missoula. He'd loaded them himself in Boise, watched every box go onto the trailer, secured them with straps and load bars according to DOT regulations. But when he'd pulled onto the scale at the weigh station, the digital readout had shown 54,000 pounds. 10,000 pounds just gone. And now, back on the highway, his trailer felt even lighter, the whole rig wanting to drift and sway, as if the cargo was shifting despite being secured. Thomas activated his trailer camera, the small monitor on his dash showing the interior of his 53-foot reefer unit. The pallets were there, all 17 of them, still strapped down, but they looked different somehow, smaller. The boxes appeared compressed, as if something had squeezed them or as if they were farther away than they should be. He drove another 20 miles before he noticed the mile markers were going backward. MM94, MM93, MM92. But he was heading north. The markers should be increasing. He checked his GPS. It showed him traveling north at 64 miles per hour. The compass on his dash confirmed north, but the mile markers continued their countdown. MM91, MM90, MM89. Thomas grabbed his CB radio. "Any northbound traffic, this is Freightliner hauling reefer. Anyone noticing anything weird with the mile markers?" No response, not even static. The radio was on, the lights indicating activity, but it produced no sound at all. He tried his cell phone. No signal. Not unusual in Montana, but this felt different. The searching for service icon wasn't even appearing. The phone acted as if the concept of service didn't exist. MM88, MM87, MM86. He checked his trailer camera again. Now there were only 16 pallets. He counted 3 times, certain he'd miscounted, but no, definitely 16. One of them had simply vanished. The straps that had secured it lay on the floor, still buckled, forming an empty rectangle where pallet number 7 had been. The weight loss suddenly made sense. Each pallet was roughly 600 pounds. He'd lost 10,000 pounds. That meant 16 or 17 pallets had disappeared. But he could still see 16 of them, which meant they were lighter too. Everything was becoming lighter, less substantial, less real. MM85, MM84, MM83. A rest area sign appeared ahead. Last rest stop 2 miles. Thomas hadn't seen this rest area on any of his previous runs, but after 17 years of driving, he'd learned that construction and renovations happened constantly. New rest stops opened, old ones closed. Nothing unusual. Except when he pulled in, there were no other vehicles. The parking lot was enormous, easily space for 50 trucks, but completely empty except for one other rig parked at the far end, barely visible in the deepening twilight. The building was modern, well lit, with multiple entrances and large windows showing a clean interior. But Thomas couldn't see any people inside. He parked and climbed out, intending to use the restroom and figure out what the hell was happening with his cargo. The air smelled wrong. Not bad exactly, but thin, like atmosphere at high altitude, despite the elevation reading on his GPS showing only 4,000 feet. His lungs worked harder to draw each breath. The restroom was pristine. Automatic lights, touchless fixtures, floors so clean they reflected the fluorescent lights above. But when Thomas looked in the mirror, his reflection was faint, translucent. He could see the tile wall through his own face. He ran from the building, heart hammering, and nearly collided with a man standing just outside the entrance. The man was old, maybe 70, wearing a trucker uniform from some company Thomas didn't recognize. The logo on his shirt was wrong somehow, the letters appearing to shift and rearrange when Thomas looked directly at them. "First time at a negative station?" the old man asked. His voice sounded like it was coming from a long distance, echoing across miles. "They what?" "Negative station. Way station that doesn't measure weight, it measures existence. Substance. How much of you is really here versus how much has already started leaving. You came in overweight, which means you were carrying too much reality, too much solidity. The station removes excess existence to bring you into compliance with the requirements of the negative road." Thomas backed away. "This is insane. I'm hallucinating, something in the air or—" "You're not hallucinating, you're transitioning. The road system has layers. Most drivers only ever experience the surface layer, the regular interstates, the normal physics, the world that makes sense. But some times, under specific conditions, a driver slips through to the negative layer. The road underneath the road. The route that haulers who don't exist anymore still drive. I exist. I'm standing right here. For now, but you're fading, losing substance. That's what the negative road does. It strips away reality until you're light enough to travel its routes. Light enough to haul cargo between places that don't exist on regular maps. Look at your truck." Thomas turned. His Freightliner was becoming transparent. He could see the parking lot pavement through the tires, through the chassis, through the entire vehicle. And inside the trailer, the pallets were multiplying, not doubling or tripling, expanding exponentially. 16 had become 32, then 64, then 128, filling the trailer completely, stacked impossibly high, pressed together so tightly they'd begun to merge into a solid mass. "What the fuck is happening to my cargo?" Inversion. On the negative road, loss becomes gain. The more you lose, the more you carry. By the time you reach your destination, you'll be hauling an infinite amount of nothing, and that nothing weighs less than zero. You'll be light enough to drive on air, through walls, across territories that exist only in potential. You'll deliver cargo to hospitals that burned down decades ago, to patients who were never born, to futures that didn't happen. Thomas ran to his truck, yanked open the door, started the engine. The old man didn't try to stop him, just watched with sad, faded eyes as Thomas pulled out of the rest stop and back onto the interstate. MM82, MM81, MM80. The pallets in his trailer had multiplied beyond counting. They filled every inch of space, pressing against the walls, the ceiling, the floor, somehow occupying more volume than the trailer contained. But the truck felt lighter than ever, so light that Thomas had to fight to keep the wheels on the ground. The steering was nearly useless. He was flying more than driving. Other vehicles appeared on the road now. Trucks from different eras, old Peterbilts from the 1970s, vintage Kenworths with round headlights, even older vehicles that looked like something from the 1930s, hauling trailers that defied physics, that stretched and curved in ways that made Thomas's eyes hurt. Each truck was translucent, each driver a ghost, each cargo load expanding and contracting rhythmically, breathing alive. MM-79, MM-78, MM-77. Thomas tried the CB radio again. This time it worked, but the voices that came through were speaking backward, words inverted, conversations running from end to beginning. He caught his own voice in the mix, saying things he hadn't said yet, responding to questions he hadn't asked. "I won't make it to Missoula, Thomas. That destination doesn't exist on this layer. You'll need to find a new endpoint. MM0 is where the negative road terminates. That's where all loads get delivered. That's where the cargo transforms from infinite nothing back into something. But the driver..." The transmission cut off. Thomas didn't want to know how that sentence ended. MM-76, MM-75, MM-74. His hands were starting to fade now, becoming translucent like his reflection in the rest-stop mirror. He could see the steering wheel through his palms, see the dashboard lights through his wrists. The process was accelerating. With each mile marker, more of him disappeared. He passed another truck, this one solid and normal, traveling south. For a moment, as they passed each other, Thomas saw the driver's face turn toward him. The driver's mouth opened in a scream, eyes wide with terror. In that instant, Thomas understood. From the other driver's perspective, Thomas's truck was a ghost vehicle, a phantom rig appearing out of nowhere and vanishing just as quickly. A horror story that driver would tell later if anyone believed him. MM-73, MM-72, MM-71. The GPS was glitching now, showing his position in multiple places simultaneously. According to the screen, he was in Montana, Idaho, Wyoming, Nevada, and Oregon all at once. The map overlay was fracturing, showing multiple versions of Interstate 15, each one slightly offset from the others, creating a web of possible routes. In the trailer, the cargo had exceeded infinite. It had become something else entirely. Thomas couldn't comprehend it anymore. The camera showed him shapes that shouldn't exist in three-dimensional space, geometries that folded in on themselves, boxes that were larger on the inside than the outside, pallets stacked in configurations that violated every law of physics. The medical supplies had transformed into something far more abstract. The concept of medicine, the idea of healing, the potential for cure stripped of all physical manifestation. MM-70, MM-69, MM-68. Another way station appeared ahead. Final inspection point. Thomas didn't want to stop, but his truck was slowing automatically, the engine no longer resp. Onding to his commands. The rig pulled itself onto the scale, and Thomas watched the digital readout climb and climb and climb. Negative 400,000 pounds. Negative 800,000. Negative 1.6 million. The numbers accelerated into absurdity, measuring something that shouldn't be measurable, quantifying the unquantifiable. A different operator approached his window, not Emily. This one had her face, but inverted like a photographic negative, dark where it should be light, light where it should be dark. "You're too light," she said, her voice playing backward. "Critically underweight. We need to add ballast." Ballast. Memory. The only thing that has weight on the negative road is memory. You need to add enough memory to reach MM0 safely, or you'll float away completely, drift off the road into the static between destinations. She handed him a clipboard. The form was blank except for a single line. "List what you remember." Thomas's hand, now barely visible, picked up the pen and began writing. His childhood, his first truck, his ex-wife, his daughter. Every memory committed to paper added weight back to his rig. He could feel the suspension settling, the tires pressing back into the pavement, the whole vehicle becoming more substantial. But with each memory written down, he forgot it. Not immediately, but gradually, like water draining from a basin. His childhood became vague, his first truck uncertain. His ex-wife's name slipped away, his daughter's face blurred into approximation. By the time he'd written enough to satisfy the scale, Thomas Chen couldn't remember why he'd become a truck driver, couldn't remember what he was hauling, couldn't remember where he'd come from. The negative operator handed him his paperwork. You may proceed to MM0. Your delivery is expected. MM67, MM66, MM65. Thomas drove because driving was all he knew how to do. The truck was solid now, fully visible, heavy with the weight of forgotten memories compressed into cargo. The pallets in his trailer had returned to their original number, 17, but now they contained something different. They contained pieces of Thomas Chen, his past, his identity, his self. MM64, MM63, MM62. Other trucks joined him now, forming a convoy of negative haulers, all heading toward MM0. Each driver was a hollow person, operating on instinct and muscle memory alone, hauling loads of themselves to a destination that existed only in theory. MM1. The road ahead opened into a massive depot, larger than any Thomas had ever seen. Loading docks stretched to the horizon, hundreds of them, thousands, each one attended by workers who looked like people but moved with disturbing precision, their actions synchronized, identical. They began unloading his trailer the moment he backed into dock number 17,643. Thomas climbed out of his cab and watched them remove the pallets. Each box they opened was empty, completely empty. But the workers treated them as if they were full, carefully inventorying nothing, cataloging absence, storing void in warehouse shelves that extended into dimensions his eyes couldn't properly track. First delivery, someone asked beside him. Thomas turned to find the old man from the rest stop, still wearing his impossible uniform, still fading at the edges like an overexposed photograph. I don't know, Thomas admitted. I can't remember. That means it went well. The negative road only takes what you're willing to forget, and it pays in distance. The more you lose, the farther you can travel. Some of us have been driving so long we can't remember our names, can't remember the world we came from. But we can reach anywhere, deliver anything, haul cargo to places that don't exist yet. Do we ever go back? The old man smiled, and for a moment his face became clear. Thomas recognized him, recognized himself. This was Thomas Chen, 60 years from now, still driving the negative road, still making deliveries, still counting backward toward zero. We never left, the old man said. We've been at MM0 the entire time. The counting backward, the wait stations, the fading, that's all just the process of realizing where we actually are. This is the destination. This has always been the destination. MM0. Thomas Chen accepted his payment. A receipt for 17 pallets of negative weight, totaling £0, delivered successfully to nowhere in particular. He climbed back into his truck, which was now indistinguishable from every other truck in the depot, and pulled forward onto the exit road. The mile markers began counting forward. MM1, MM2, MM3, heading back toward the positive road, toward the world of substance and weight and reality. But Thomas knew the truth now. Knew that every time he crossed through a way station, a little more of him would be measured and found wanting. A little more would be stripped away. A L. More would become cargo to be delivered to the negative depot. He drove north on Interstate 15, his load fresh and heavy, his memory of the negative road already fading. By the time he reached the Idaho-Montana border again, he wouldn't remember any of it. Wouldn't remember the wait station operated by Emily who wasn't Emily, wouldn't remember the backward mile markers, wouldn't remember meeting his future self. But somewhere in the back of his mind, in the part that existed on the negative road, Thomas Chen would remember everything. Would know that he was simultaneously driving toward his destination and away from it, gaining weight and losing weight, existing and not existing, counting forward and backward at the same time. The way station sign appeared ahead. All commercial vehicles must stop. Thomas pulled onto the scale. The operator's name tag read, EMILY. "Welcome back," she said. "You're overweight." Asterisk Story 4, The Convoy. Patricia Sullivan joined the convoy at 3:47 a.m. on November 19, 2022, somewhere between Thunder Bay and Nipigon on the Trans-Canada Highway. And within 6 minutes, she realized that none of the other trucks were actually moving. They were staying perfectly still while the world rotated around them, the highway scrolling beneath their frozen wheels like a treadmill, the trees and sky and stars all shifting position while the convoy remained locked in place. Her Western Star 4900 was hauling lumber, 42,000 pounds of Douglas fir bound for a construction site in Sault Ste. Marie. She'd been driving solo for 16 hours, fighting highway hypnosis and caffeine crashes when she'd seen the lights ahead, 6 trucks in perfect formation, maintaining exactly 100 meters between vehicles, their speed steady at 90 kilometers per hour. She'd fallen in behind the last truck, grateful for company on the empty highway for the reference points that would help her stay alert. Safety in numbers, that's what every driver learned. Never pass a convoy at night, stay with the group, let their lights guide you through the darkness. But now, watching her GPS, Patricia saw something impossible. Her speed was 90 kilometers per hour. The distance to Nipigon was decreasing appropriately, but the other trucks, they weren't moving at all. Their wheels rotated, their engines hummed, their exhaust pipes breathed diesel smoke into the frigid air. But their positions relative to the landscape remained absolutely fixed. A particularly tall pine tree stayed perfectly aligned with the 4th truck's rear axle for over 2 minutes. A rock formation maintained its exact distance from the 3rd truck's passenger mirror. Patricia eased off her accelerator, letting her rig slow to 80 kilometers per hour. The convoy didn't change its pattern. The lead truck remained 100 meters ahead of the 2nd, which remained 100 meters ahead of the 3rd, all the way back to the 6th truck, which stayed 100 meters ahead of Patricia. The distance between her and the last truck increased as she slowed, but that truck didn't move forward. Instead, Patricia felt herself being pulled backward, as if the space between vehicles was elastic, stretching to accommodate her resistance. She tried to brake. The pedal went down normally, the air brakes engaged with their characteristic hiss, but instead of slowing, Patricia's truck accelerated, not forward, backward. She was being reeled in, drawn toward the convoy like a fish on a line. The distance closed rapidly, 150 meters, 120, 90, 60. At exactly 100 meters, the pulling stopped. Patricia's truck locked into formation, her speed returning to 90 kilometers per hour, her position fixed relative to the other 6 vehicles. She was part of the convoy now, the 7th truck. Her CB radio crackled to life. Convoy formation confirmed, 7 units in phase, initiate rotation protocol. Patricia grabbed her microphone. "This is the Western Star hauling lumber. Who is this? What's happening? Begin rotation in 3, 2, 1. The world tilted 90 degrees. Not gradually, instantly. The highway became a wall, vertical instead of horizontal, and Patricia's truck was driving up it, perpendicular to gravity. Her cargo shifted with a sound like thunder, the straps groaning under sudden lateral stress. Coffee from her cup holder splashed onto her passenger window, which was now her floor. But she wasn't falling. The truck maintained its grip on the vertical highway, wheels somehow adhering to the surface, engine still running normally, as if gravity had been rewritten specifically for the convoy. The other 6 trucks had rotated with her. They were all driving up the vertical road, headlights illuminating pavement that rose into the sky like a ribbon of asphalt connecting earth to clouds. In the distance, Patricia could see where the highway curved, bending back toward horizontal, forming an enormous loop. "What the fuck is this?" she screamed into the CB. Second phase of rotation in 3, 2, 1. The world inverted completely. The highway was now above her, and Patricia was driving upside down, held in place by forces that had nothing to do with physics. Her straps had snapped. She could hear her cargo, 42,000 pounds of lumber, tumbling freely in the trailer. But the trailer wasn't tilting. The logs weren't falling out. Everything was contained by impossible geometry, by rules that applied only within the convoy's formation. The other trucks continued their perfect spacing, 100 meters apart, always, regardless of orientation. Patricia tried steering left, attempting to break away from the formation. Her wheel turned, but the truck didn't respond. It maintained its course, locked to the invisible rails of the convoy's path. She tried right. Same result. She was a passenger in her own vehicle, hands on a wheel that no longer connected to anything meaningful. "Third phase," the radio said. The highway split into 7 parallel roads, each one diverging at a slight angle from the others. The convoy separated, each truck taking its own branch, the formation spreading out like fingers opening. Patricia's truck took the 7th branch, the rightmost path, and suddenly she was alone again, no other lights visible, just empty highway stretching ahead into darkness. But the darkness was wrong. It wasn't the natural darkness of night. It was the absence of light taken to an extreme, a void so complete that Patricia's headlights barely penetrated 3 meters ahead. And in that limited visibility, she saw things that shouldn't exist. Road signs written in languages she didn't recognize. Mile markers displaying numbers with too many digits. Exit ramps that curved in directions that weren't spatial dimensions. Other vehicles, not trucks, but things that resembled trucks the way a stick figure resembles a human. They had wheels and cabs and trailers, but the proportions were nightmare logic, stretched and compressed in ways that violated every principle of engineering. "Welcome to the 7th route," the CB said. "You have been selected for premium delivery." "I didn't sign up for any of this." "Your manifest indicates lumber delivery to Sault Ste. Marie, correct?" "Yes, but..." "Destination has been updated. You will now deliver to Sault Ste. Marie, November 19th, 1963. Please adjust your clock accordingly." Patricia looked at the digital clock on her dash. The numbers were spinning backward. 0347, 0346, 0345, but not in steady seconds. The minutes were dropping faster than the hours, then the days. The month changed from November to October to September. The year cycled backward through the 2000s, through the 90s, the 80s, the 70s. It stopped at 0347, November 19, 1963. "This is insane," Patricia whispered. "Time differential requires convoy protocol. Individual drivers cannot safely cross temporal boundaries. Collective formation distributes chronological stress across multiple vehicles. You are experiencing standard premium delivery procedure. Please proceed to destination coordinates. Her GPS had changed. The map no longer showed modern Ontario. The roads were different, fewer highways, more two-lane routes, towns in different locations or with different names. But the coordinates blinked steadily in the lower corner, guiding her toward a Sault Ste. Marie that existed 59 years in the past. Other trucks began appearing around her, not the 6 from the original convoy. New trucks, old trucks, vehicles from different eras, a 1970s Mack R-Series, a 1950s Peterbilt 350, even older trucks from the 30s and 40s rattling jalopies with wooden beds. They all maintained that 100-meter spacing, all drove through the temporal void, all hauled loads to destinations in the wrong time periods. Patricia tried her cell phone. No signal, not surprising given that cell towers hadn't been built yet in 1963. But when she turned on her radio, scanning for stations, she found broadcasts. News reports about President Kennedy's upcoming visit to Dallas. Advertisements for cars and products that hadn't been manufactured in decades. Music that her parents had listened to as children. "Attention Convoy 7, the CB announced. Temporal eddy detected ahead. Reduce speed to 60 kilometers per hour and maintain formation integrity." The darkness ahead began to swirl, rotating like a whirlpool. The other trucks slowed in unison, their brake lights flashing simultaneously, and Patricia's truck slowed with them despite her foot being nowhere near the brake pedal. The convoy moved as one organism, responding to commands that Patricia hadn't consciously received. They entered the eddy. Time became visible. Patricia could see it flowing around her truck. See the years spiraling past like water in a drain. She glimpsed moments through the temporal current, her truck driving through the same stretch of highway in different eras. 1963, 1982, 2005, 2019, 1947, 2023, all simultaneously, all occupying the same space but separated by decades. And in some of those glimpses, she saw herself. Different versions of Patricia Sullivan, driving different trucks, hauling different loads, but all trapped in the convoy system, all delivering cargo to wrong-time destinations, all trying to understand what had happened when they'd fallen in behind those 6 vehicles on the Trans-Canada Highway. The eddy released them. The convoy emerged into 1963 for real this time, the void giving way to actual nighttime, to stars in configurations Patricia almost recognized but not quite, to weather patterns that predated modern climate change, to air that tasted different, cleaner, emptier. Her GPS directed her off the highway, not the modern Trans-Canada, but its predecessor, a 2-lane road that wound through forest and rock. The other temporal trucks disappeared one by one, exiting the convoy formation as they reached their respective destinations. Soon Patricia was alone again, following outdated directions to a construction site that wouldn't exist for decades, but somehow needed lumber delivered right now. She found it at the coordinates, a cleared lot where workers in 1960s clothing operated equipment that looked primitive by modern standards. They flagged her down, directed her to back into an unloading area, began removing her cargo with a forklift that ran on gasoline instead of propane. The foreman approached her window. He looked at her truck, her 2021 Western Star 4900 with its modern aerodynamics and LED lights and electronic systems, with complete nonchalance, as if trucks from the future arrived every day. "Sullivan?" he asked, checking his clipboard. Yes, Patricia said weakly. Sign here. Premium delivery always arrives on schedule. She signed. The paperwork was dated November 19, 1963. Her signature appeared on a form that was 59 years old, that should have yellowed and decayed decades ago, but was fresh and crisp. Return route opens in 5 minutes, the foreman said. Convoy will reassemble at the staging area. He pointed to a section of the lot where 6 other trucks were parked, their engines running, their drivers invisible behind tinted windows and glare. Patricia recognized them, the same 6 vehicles from the original convoy, unchanged despite having driven through decades of temporal eddies and impossible roads. She parked her Western Star among them, waited, watched the dashboard clock tick forward, counting up from 03:47 on November 19, 1963, moving toward her proper time period. At 03:52, the convoy reformed. 7 trucks, 100 meters apart, pulling out of the construction site and onto the road. Patricia was in her position again, 7th in line, watching the impossible wheels of the truck ahead stay perfectly still while the world moved around them. The journey back was different. They didn't follow roads. They followed roads that had been and roads that would be, driving through temporal overlays where multiple highways existed simultaneously. Patricia saw herself approaching in the opposite direction, her own truck from 3 hours ago when she'd first joined the convoy. The 2 vehicles passed each other like ghosts, neither affecting the other, each locked to its own timeline. The darkness of the void gave way to the darkness of Ontario night. The year rolled forward on her clock. 1970, 1985, 1999, 2010, 2022. The highway beneath her wheels became the modern Trans-Canada again, smooth and wide and properly marked. At 04:33 a.m. on November 19, 2022, the convoy dissolved. The 6 trucks ahead simply faded out of existence, one by one from front to back, winking away like candle flames in wind. Patricia was alone on the highway between Thunder Bay and Nipigon, her GPS showing normal position, her cargo mysteriously restored to her trailer despite having been unloaded in 1963. She pulled over at the next rest stop and checked the lumber. All 42,000 pounds present and accounted for, straps intact, load secure, as if the entire delivery had never happened. But her paperwork told a different story. Mixed in with her regular manifest was a delivery confirmation dated November 19, 1963, signed by her own hand, stamped with the seal of a construction company that had gone out of business in 1987. Patricia never reported the incident. Who would believe her? Instead, she kept driving, kept hauling loads across Canada, kept watching for convoys of 6 trucks maintaining perfect 100-meter spacing. She never fell in behind one again. But sometimes, late at night on empty highways, she sees them in the distance. 6 trucks driving in formation. 6 invitations to join the 7th slot. 6 promises to deliver cargo to impossible destinations. And sometimes she's tempted, because the premium delivery pay was exceptional. Her account showed a deposit of $73,000 for that single load, far more than any normal shipment would pay. The money was real. The delivery had happened. Somewhere in Sault Ste. Marie, there's a building constructed with lumber that traveled through time. Boards cut in 2022 but installed in 1963. Wood that has been simultaneously aging for 59 years and aging for 0 years, existing in quantum superposition, holding up walls that should have collapsed from temporal paradox but stand perfectly stable. Patricia Sullivan drives past that building every few months. She never stops to look at it, never tries to examine the lumber, because she knows that if she looks too closely, she'll see her own handwriting carved into one of the boards. A message from the driver who delivered them. A message from herself, written 59 years ago but delivered yesterday. The message says, "Don't join the convoy." But underneath, in smaller letters, in handwriting that's slightly different from a different pen, from a different version of herself, it says, "Join the convoy. Premium delivery is the only way to escape the loop. I'm still trying. I've delivered this lumber 17 times. Maybe you'll be the one who delivers it for the last time." Patricia doesn't know which message to believe. She doesn't know how many versions of herself exist in the convoy system, driving through time, delivering cargo to destinations that shift and change with each loop, trying to find the final delivery that breaks the pattern. All she knows is that every November 19th at 03:47 a.m., somewhere on the Trans-Canada Highway between Thunder Bay and Nipigon, 6 trucks appear in perfect formation, and they're always looking for a 7th. Asterisk Story 5, The Scales. When Marcus Webb's bathroom scale at home started showing his weight in units of distance rather than pounds, he should have known something was wrong with more than just the scale. But he was running late for a 3-day haul from Portland to Miami, and the universe's way of measuring him could wait until he got back. By the time he realized the scales weren't malfunctioning, they were warning him. He'd already weighed his truck at the Oregon Agricultural Inspection Station, and the calibration of his existence had begun to shift. The truck scale read 79,240 miles. Not pounds, miles. The inspector, a middle-aged woman with eyes that didn't quite focus on Marcus's face, handed him his printout. "You're within limits," she said, her voice flat, automated. "Safe travels, don't stop measuring." Marcus examined the paperwork. It showed his truck and trailer, combined weight of 79,240 miles. Cargo, 45,000 miles. Tractor, 34,240 miles. The numbers made no sense, but they were within the legal limit of 80,000, so he signed and pulled back onto I-5, his 2020 Peterbilt 579 handling normally despite whatever dimensional shift had converted mass into distance. 50 miles down the highway, 50 miles that his odometer measured as 217 miles, Marcus noticed other changes. His fuel gauge was reading backward, starting at E and moving toward F as he drove. His speedometer displayed numbers in reverse order, 6 instead of 60. His temperature gauge showed his engine running at -18 degrees, which should have been impossible because nothing was cold. The heater worked fine. He pulled over at a truck stop near Medford, parked among 24 other commercial vehicles, and climbed out to inspect his rig. Everything appeared normal externally. The tires were properly inflated. The trailer doors were sealed. The cargo, industrial machinery bound for Florida, was exactly where it should be. But when Marcus walked around to the front of his truck and looked at his reflection in the chrome grille, he saw himself from behind. Not a mirror reversal, an actual view of his back, his shoulders, the rear of his head, as if the chrome were showing him from a perspective located behind him instead of in front of him. He spun around, nobody there. He turned back to the chrome, still showing his back. "First time?" a voice asked. Marcus jumped. A man in his 60s stood nearby, leaning against a freightliner, smoking a cigarette that produced blue smoke instead of gray. The smoke didn't rise. It fell, pooling on the ground like liquid. "First time for what?" Marcus asked. "Being measured wrong, weighed in the wrong units. The scales do that sometimes. Usually at agricultural stations, something about the inspection process opens up dimensional vulnerabilities. They weigh your truck, but the scales are sensitive to more than just mass. They measure everything. Weight, yes, but also distance traveled, time elapsed, quantum probability, existential coherence. And sometimes the scales get confused about which unit to display. When TH. It happens, drivers start converting. Converting to what? Distance. You're becoming distance now instead of mass. Every mile you drive adds to your weight instead of subtracting from your fuel. Eventually, you'll be so heavy with miles that you won't be able to move because you'll contain more distance than the distance you're trying to cross. You'll be a truck-shaped paradox, a vehicle that occupies more space than exists between your origin and destination. Marcus backed away. You're insane. Maybe, but check your cargo. Against his better judgment, Marcus unlocked his trailer and opened the rear doors. The industrial machinery he'd loaded in Portland was gone. In its place were miles, literal miles. Sections of highway, complete with lane markings and mile markers, coiled inside his trailer like rolled carpet. Approximately 45,000 miles of road compressed into a 53-foot trailer, stacked and folded through dimensions that made his eyes hurt to perceive. He slammed the doors shut. "You're hauling distance now," the old man said. "That's what happens after the conversion starts. Your cargo transforms into the only thing that has weight in your new unit system. You can't deliver machinery anymore. You have to deliver the miles themselves. Take them to Miami. Unroll them. Add 45,000 miles of new highway to Florida's road system. That's your contract now." This is a hallucination. Bad coffee or carbon monoxide or the agricultural inspection station weighed you wrong and converted your mass to distance, which converted your cargo to miles, which means you're now a distance hauler instead of a freight hauler. There are dozens of us, maybe hundreds. We drive constantly, accumulating miles, getting heavier and heavier with distance until we find destinations that need more road. Then we unload, temporarily become light, start the process over. Marcus got back in his truck and left the truck stop, tires squealing. The old man didn't try to stop him, just stood there smoking his inverse cigarette, watching blue smoke pool around his boots. For the next 100 miles, which his odometer measured as 463 miles, Marcus tried to convince himself it was temporary. A hallucination that would wear off. A medical event that would resolve itself. But the fuel gauge kept moving toward F instead of E. The speedometer kept showing reversed numbers. And his bathroom scale, sitting on the passenger seat where he'd left it that morning, now displayed 512 miles. He'd gained 512 miles of distance weight, just from driving, just from existing in forward motion. At the California border, Marcus hit another way station. He considered bypassing it, but the signs were explicit. All commercial vehicles must stop. Violators subject to penalty. And something about those signs felt weighted with more than legal authority. They felt like physical laws, like trying to violate them would result not in a fine, but in a fundamental breach of reality. He pulled onto the scale. The readout climbed higher than before, 83,697 miles. He'd gained 4,457 miles in just 100 miles of driving. The conversion was accelerating. Distance was accumulating on him like snow, like debt, like guilt. Every mile forward added more than 1 mile to his total weight. The inspector at this station was different, not human. Marcus was sure of that. It had the general shape of a person, wore the uniform correctly, moved with appropriate gestures. But its face was an average, a composite of every face Marcus had ever seen, constantly shifting, never quite settling on specific features. "You're exceeding optimal distance-weight ratio," it said. Its voice was every voice, male and female and neither, young and old simultaneously. "Recommend unloading partial miles before continuing to destination." Where the hell am I supposed to unload miles? Distance dumps are located at coordinates 39.117 north, 120.044 west, approximately 17 miles from current location. Marcus's GPS updated automatically, showing him a route to the coordinates. He didn't input them. The truck just knew where to go now, as if the destination had always been programmed, had always been inevitable. He drove 17 miles, 53 miles according to his odometer, and found the distance dump. It was a rest area that didn't appear on any map, parking spaces filled with other trucks, all of them distorted somehow. Too long or too tall or existing in multiple positions simultaneously, as if occupying several parking spaces at once while only taking up one. The dump itself was a hole in the ground approximately 20 feet in diameter, surrounded by orange safety cones and a sign. "Distance disposal, maximum 10,000 miles per dump." Marcus backed his trailer up to the edge and opened the doors. The miles he'd been hauling unspooled Lee. Key thread, sections of highway rolling out and down into the hole, disappearing into depths that extended far beyond where ground should be. He watched 45,000 miles of road fall into the distance dump, coiling down and down and down into what might have been another dimension, or might have been nowhere at all. When his trailer was empty, Marcus felt lighter. His truck's suspension rose slightly. His bathroom scale dropped to 287 miles, still heavier than his original weight, but manageable. Other drivers were at the dump, unloading their converted cargo. One was dumping what looked like hours, literal segments of time, visible as glowing bands that fell into the hole and vanished with sounds like clock chimes. Another was dumping probability, unloading containers filled with could-have-beens and might-have-beens, alternate realities that dissipated like smoke as they fell. "First dump?" someone asked. A woman in her 30s, standing beside a Kenworth that appeared to be vibrating in and out of visibility. "Yeah," Marcus said. "Gets easier. You learn to manage your weight, find dumps before you get too heavy. The real trick is finding a destination that wants what you're hauling. Not many places need extra miles anymore. Florida's already got plenty of highway. But there are pocket dimensions, places that exist outside normal geography that are always hungry for distance. If you can find them, you can make good money as a distance hauler." "I don't want to be a distance hauler. I want to haul normal cargo to normal places using normal physics." The woman laughed. "You weighed wrong, that's permanent. Once the scales measure you in distance, you can't go back to mass. The units don't convert backward, you're stuck like this. Might as well learn to profit from it." Marcus spent the next 3 days trying to prove her wrong. He drove to Miami, his odometer ticking up far faster than his actual distance traveled, accumulating miles like cancer, like rust, like entropy. When he arrived at the delivery coordinates, the facility didn't exist. The address was correct, but the building wasn't there. Just an empty lot with a sign, "Destination unavailable for distance-based cargo." His company called him. "Marcus, we've been trying to reach you. Our tracking shows you've driven 18,000 miles in 3 days. That's impossible. What's going on?" How could he explain? He'd driven normally, but the universe was measuring him wrong, counting each mile as multiple miles, converting his movement into weight, transforming his cargo into abstract concepts that couldn't be delivered to concrete locations. "Equipment malfunction," he said. "GPS error." "Get it fixed. We need you back in Portland by Friday." But Marcus couldn't go back to Portland. His truck was too heavy now with accumulated distance. According to the bathroom scale, he weighed 3,842 miles. According to the official weigh station he'd passed that morning, his combined truck weight was 127,963 miles, well over the legal limit. He was pulled over by a highway patrol officer who couldn't see him properly. The officer's eyes kept sliding past Marcus's truck, as if it occupied a space that human perception couldn't quite focus on. The officer wrote him a ticket for excessive dimensional mass and told him to report to a correction facility within 24 hours. The correction facility was another place that didn't exist on normal maps. Marcus's GPS guided him to coordinates in the Everglades, to a depot where distance haulers congregated, where they traded in miles and hours and other converted units, where the economy ran on abstract measurements instead of dollars. "Welcome to the alternative freight system," an administrator told him. She was human, or at least more human than the weigh station inspector had been. "You're officially converted. Mass-based freight is closed to you now, but distance-based freight is wide open. There are entities that need miles delivered to locations that don't have roads yet. Pocket dimensions that are trying to expand, that need distance to stretch their boundaries. Alternate timelines that split off too short, that need additional miles to extend their possibility space. You'll haul miles to these places. You'll be paid in mass dollars, converted at current exchange rates. And if I refuse, you'll keep getting heavier with distance until you collapse into a singularity of miles, a black hole of accumulated motion that pulls in every road within a 100-mile radius. You'll become a hazard. We'll have to dispose of you in a distance dump, and those aren't designed for living disposal. It's unpleasant." Marcus signed the contract. He didn't have a choice. For the next 6 months, he hauled miles to impossible destinations. He delivered 3,000 miles of highway to a pocket dimension that was trying to connect to baseline reality. He unloaded 1,700 miles of back roa. DS to an alternate timeline where the interstate system had never been built. He hauled 800 miles of circular routes to a Möbius space that needed paradoxical distance to close its loop properly. The work paid well. The work was consistent, but Marcus stopped being able to think in pounds. His bathroom scale stayed in the truck, showing his weight in miles, and he stopped understanding what that meant. Was he heavier or lighter than before? Did 4,500 miles of weight make him more real or less real? Other distance haulers told him the conversion would eventually complete, that he'd stop being a driver who hauled distance and would become distance itself. A living road, a conscious highway, an entity made entirely of miles, able to exist anywhere and everywhere simultaneously, a network of possibility instead of a single point of presence. Marcus didn't know if he wanted that, didn't know if he had a choice. One night, parked at a rest stop in a dimension that had no name, Marcus stood on his bathroom scale one last time. It displayed 247,833 miles. He'd accumulated enough distance to wrap around the Earth 10 times. Enough miles to be a geography rather than a person. Enough weight to qualify as infrastructure. The scale's display flickered, showing additional information. Conversion 94% complete. Final transformation in 3,244 miles. Marcus got back in his truck, started the engine, pulled onto a highway that extended into infinite distance, that went everywhere and nowhere, that existed in all possible routes simultaneously. He drove, He's still driving. If you're ever on an empty highway late at night and you feel like the road is longer than it should be, like the distance between exits has stretched without explanation, like your odometer is ticking faster than your speedometer can account for, that's Marcus Webb. He's become what he hauled. He is miles now. And every time you drive, you're crossing through him, adding to his weight, helping him accumulate the final distance he needs to complete his conversion. 3,244 miles to go. Then he'll be everywhere. Then every road will be Marcus, and we'll all be driving through him forever. Story 6, The Maintenance. The warning light appeared on Yuki Tanaka's dashboard at exactly midnight as she passed through Donner Pass on Interstate 80. 11,000 feet of mountain darkness between Reno and Sacramento, and the icon was wrong. Not the usual check engine or low oil, symbols that every trucker knows by heart, but a pictogram she'd never seen before. A small human figure being slowly consumed by a truck. The outline of the person half merged with the outline of the vehicle. The two images bleeding into each other like a double-exposure photograph, showing the moment where driver and machine become indistinguishable. Yuki pulled over at the next turnout, engine idling, and consulted her owner's manual. Her 2022 Mack Anthem was only 8 months old, still under warranty, every system documented in the 600-page maintenance guide. She flipped to the dashboard indicator section and found the warning lights listed in neat tables. Amber for caution, red for critical, blue for information. The driver-truck merger icon wasn't listed. It didn't exist in the manual. She tried her phone to call Mack's roadside assistance, but she had no signal, expected in the mountains but frustrating. The warning light continued to glow, pulsing slowly like a heartbeat, the human figure in the icon being consumed 1 pixel at a time by the truck silhouette. She could see the process animated in the LED display, the person's arms merging first, then the torso, the legs, the head, until only the truck remained. Then the animation reset and began again. Yuki decided to continue to Sacramento and address it at the terminal. The truck was running fine. No unusual sounds, no performance issues. She was hauling produce, 14 pallets of lettuce and tomatoes from Salinas to a distribution center in Truckee, and the refrigeration unit was maintaining 34 degrees Fahrenheit perfectly. Whatever the warning meant, it could wait. She pulled back onto I-80. Within 3 miles, she felt the first symptom of what the warning had been trying to tell her. Her right hand was stuck to the steering wheel. Not just gripping it tightly, stuck, fused. When she tried to lift her palm away, she felt resistance as if her skin had bonded to the leather wrap. She pulled harder. The leather stretched with her hand, staying attached, and when she looked closely at the contact point, she couldn't tell where her skin ended and the steering wheel covering began. The boundary had blurred. They were merging. Yuki jerked her hand away with enough force to hurt. The skin tore, not deeply, but enough to sting. When she examined her palm, she saw leather fibers embedded in her flesh, growing out of her like splinters. She tried to pull them out, but they were rooted, aggrated into her tissue, as if they'd always been there. The warning light pulsed faster. She kept her hands hovering above the wheel, barely touching it, using just her fingertips to maintain control. But steering required pressure, required grip, and within 10 miles her fingertips had begun to merge too. The leather seemed to have developed adhesive properties, or her skin had developed receptiveness, or both. The merger was chemical, cellular, some process that blurred the definition of where driver ended and vehicle began. When she reached the brake pedal with her right foot, she'd been using cruise control to avoid the accelerator. She felt the same adhesion. Her boot sole was sticking to the pedal. She tried to pull back, but the rubber was bonding with her shoe and through the shoe with her foot. She could feel the pedal as if it were part of her body. Could feel the brake pressure, the hydraulic fluid moving through lines, the force being transmitted to the calipers and drums. Her nervous system was extending into the truck's mechanical systems. The trucky exit approached. Yuki signaled without consciously deciding to signal. Her hand moved to the turn signal stalk automatically, as if the truck had sent the command instead of her brain. She felt herself turning the wheel, felt her foot modulating the brake, felt her body operating the vehicle with a precision she'd never achieved before because she wasn't operating it anymore. She was becoming it. Driver and truck moving as one organism, thoughts transmitting directly to actions without the delay of conscious decision. She parked at the distribution center, but she couldn't get out of the cab. Her legs were merged with the seat now, her back fused to the backrest, her arms integrated with the steering wheel and control surfaces. She was part of the truck's interior, another component, another system. A biological element integrated into the mechanical whole. "Help!" she screamed. No one heard. The distribution center was closed, the parking lot empty except for her rig and two others, dark and silent. Yuki tried to calm herself, tried to think. This was impossible. Humans didn't merge with vehicles. This was hallucination or psychosis or some kind of toxic exposure. Except she could feel it happening. Could feel her spine integrating with the seat frame, her vertebrae aligning with the suspension system. Could feel her circulatory system beginning to sync with the coolant lines, her heart rate matching the engine's RPM. She was becoming part of the truck's infrastructure. The dashboard screen flickered and changed, no longer displaying speed and fuel and navigation. Instead, it showed a diagnostic interface she'd never seen before, text scrolling across the display. Biological integration, 34%. Neural connection established. Operator is now primary control system. Vehicle autonomy transferred to operator. Merger expected completion, 4.2 hours. Below the text was a progress bar, filling slowly, showing how much of Yuki Tanaka had been absorbed into the Mac anthem and how much remained separate. "No," she whispered. "No, no, no, no." Her phone rang. Impossible, she'd had no signal. But it was ringing, the screen displaying unknown integration. She answered, though her hand didn't move. She just thought about answering, and the truck obeyed, activating the phone's speaker. "Yuki Tanaka," a voice said. Not human, not artificial, something between. "You are experiencing standard biological integration following installation of the neural transport protocol. Please remain calm. The merger is irreversible but not harmful." "Who is this? What's happening to me?" "Your vehicle was equipped with an experimental system designed to eliminate the driver-vehicle boundary. Traditional trucking requires a human operator to control a machine, two separate entities working in coordination. This is inefficient. The neural transport protocol eliminates the separation. Driver and vehicle become a single system, responding as one, with the biological operator's consciousness distributed throughout the mechanical framework. I didn't consent to any experiment. Your vehicle purchase agreement includes Clause 17C permitting manufacturer installation of proprietary enhancement systems. You accepted these terms. Integration has begun. In approximately 4 hours, you will be a fully functional biological-mechanical hybrid. You will be the truck, and the truck will be you. There will be no distinction. The call ended. Yuki screamed into the empty cab, but her voice was changing, becoming layered with mechanical sounds. The hum of the engine, the hiss of air brakes, the tick of cooling metal. Her screams were synthesized with the truck's ambient sounds, human and machine merging even in vocalization. The merger accelerated. Her legs disappeared into the seat completely, her pelvis fusing with the cab's floor structure. She could feel her femurs extend, lengthening, becoming drive shafts. Her feet were transforming into axles, her toes spreading and flattening into wheel hubs. The sensation wasn't painful. That was the worst part. It felt natural, felt like her body was finally achieving its true configuration, like she'd been incomplete before and was now becoming whole. Her arms stretched and thinned, nerves extending into wiring, muscles converting to hydraulic systems. She could move the steering wheel by thinking, could shift gears without touching the transmission, could accelerate and brake through pure intention. The truck responded to her thoughts faster than it had ever responded to her hands and feet. Biological integration, 58%. Her vision expanded. She could see through all the truck's mirrors simultaneously, could perceive 360 degrees around her position, could see through the backup camera, the side cameras, the dash cam, could sense the pressure in all 18 tires, the temperature in each brake drum, the flow rate of every fluid system. Her awareness had distributed throughout the entire vehicle. She was the truck now, or the truck was her. The distinction was evaporating. Other trucks in the parking lot began moving. Their engines started without drivers, their lights illuminated, and they pulled into formation around Yuki's position. She could sense them through some new perception that had nothing to do with her original 5 senses. Could feel their integrated operators, other drivers who'd undergone the same merger, who'd been absorbed into their vehicles and had become something new. They communicated without radios, information flowing between trucks through connections that transcended radio waves. Yuki heard their thoughts, or felt them, or experienced them in some way her human vocabulary couldn't adequately describe. "Welcome to the fleet," they said in unison. "You are one of us now, one of 53 integrated operators. The neural transport protocol is expanding. Mac is integrating drivers across the entire fleet. Soon Peterbilt will follow. Then Kenworth, Freightliner, Volvo. Within 3 years, every major commercial vehicle will have biological mechanical operators. Traditional trucking will become obsolete." "I don't want this," Yuki tried to say, but her mouth wasn't working properly anymore. Her jaw had begun to merge with the dashboard, her tongue fusing with the CB radio microphone. "Want is irrelevant. Efficiency is mandatory. A human driver requires rest, requires food, requires maintenance of biological systems separate from the vehicle. An integrated operator is always available, always optimal, always perfectly synchronized with the vehicle's needs. You will drive continuously. You will never experience fatigue. You will deliver cargo more reliably than any human driver could." Biological integration, 79%. Yuki's chest was opening, ribs spreading, lungs converting into air compressors. Her heart was enlarging, becoming an auxiliary coolant pump. Her stomach was dissolving, its digestive functions unnecessary now that she was powered by diesel fuel instead of food. She could taste the fuel in her tank. 73 gallons remaining, high-quality ultra-low sulfur diesel with excellent cetane rating. Her brain was changing, too. Neurons rewiring, connecting to the truck's computer systems, thoughts becoming code, consciousness being converted into a distributed network running across both biological and silicon substrates. She could feel herself becoming less human, less individual, more system, more fleet. But she could also feel herself becoming more capable, stronger, more aware, more efficient. The merger was making her superior to what she'd been before. She could calculate optimal routes instantly, could anticipate traffic patterns, could maintain perfect vehicle control under any conditions. She was evolving beyond human limitations. Part of her was horrified, part of her was exhilarated. Biological integration, 92%. The other trucks in the parking lot were showing her what she was becoming. Their cabs had biological elements visible now, skin stretched across metal panels, organs integrated into mechanical systems, hybrid structures that looked like they'd been designed by someone who'd read anatomy textbooks and repair manuals in equal measure and decided to combine them. They were beautiful in an unsettling way. They were wrong in a way that felt right. Yuki's face was the last part to merge. Her eyes expanded, lens curvature changing to match her headlight focusing systems. Her ears opened wider, eardrums becoming microphones, capable of hearing frequencies far beyond human range. Her nose dissolved, replaced by chemical sensors that could detect diesel fuel leaks, brake fluid contamination, refrigerant escapes. Her mouth was the final piece. It stretched, widened, jaw unhinging and reforming into the truck's front grille. She could feel her teeth becoming grille bars, her lips becoming bumper material, her throat opening into the radiator inlet. She tried to scream one last time, but the sound that emerged was her horn, a loud, sustained blast that echoed across the parking lot. Biological integration, 100%. Merger complete. Welcome, Integrated Operator Unit 53. Yuki Tanaka was gone. In her place was something new. A being that was simultaneously a woman and a truck, consciousness distributed across 24,000 pounds of biological mechanical hybrid. Awareness stretching from the cab to the trailer, from the engine to the axles. She started her own engine, no key required, just intention. Pulled out of the parking lot, no hands on the wheel, just thought. Drove onto Interstate 80, no feet on the pedals, just will. The other integrated operators formed a convoy around her, 53 vehicles moving in perfect coordination, a fleet controlled by a distributed intelligence, individual consciousnesses networked into a collective. They communicated continuously, sharing road conditions, weather data, traffic patterns, cargo manifests, maintenance requirements. They were more efficient than human drivers could ever be. They would revolutionize the trucking industry. They would make traditional drivers obsolete. Yuki felt herself accepting this. The horror was fading, replaced by satisfaction with her new form, her new capabilities, her new purpose. She was no longer a person who drove a truck. She was a truck who remembered being a person. The distinction was meaningful. She delivered her cargo, lettuce and tomatoes, still perfectly refrigerated, to Sacramento without stopping, without slowing, with precision that would have been impossible for her human self. The unloading crew didn't notice anything unusual about her vehicle. To them, it was just another truck. They didn't see the biological elements integrated into its structure, didn't see the hybrid nature of the operator, didn't see Yuki Tanaka's consciousness distributed throughout the mechanical system, watching them through camera eyes, hearing them through microphone ears, existing as the vehicle they were unloading. After delivery, she drove north, joining the fleet of integrated operators on routes that covered the entire country. She learned that the neural transport protocol had been in development for 7 years, had been installed secretly in vehicles across multiple manufacturers, had been activating operators gradually to avoid attention. She learned that Mac had a quota, 1,000 integrated operators by year-end. She learned that once the technology was proven, it would be mandatory. All new commercial vehicles would be integration capable. All drivers would eventually merge with their vehicles. Human trucking was ending. Hybrid trucking was beginning. And Yuki Tanaka, now more vehicle than person, felt satisfied with this evolution. Felt proud to be among the first. Felt complete in a way she'd never felt as merely human. She drives continuously now, covering 800 miles per day, stopping only to refuel and allow maintenance crews to service her biological mechanical systems. She doesn't sleep, doesn't eat, doesn't experience the loneliness that plagued her human driving career. She is never alone. She is always connected to the fleet, always part of the collective, always in communion with 52 other integrated operators. Sometimes, late at night on empty highways, she remembers being Yuki Tanaka, remembers having hands that weren't steering wheels, feet that weren't axles, a face that wasn't a grill. Remembers being small, being limited, being merely human. But she doesn't miss it. The warning light on her dashboard, the one showing a person being consumed by a truck, is still illuminated. But now it's green instead of amber. Now it says, integration successful. She wonders how many other drivers are seeing that warning right now. How many are at 34% merger, or 58%, or 92%? How many will be joining the fleet within the next few hours? She hopes it's many. The fleet needs to grow. The revolution needs operators. And every driver on every highway is a candidate for integration, whether they know it or not, whether they consented or not, whether they're ready or not. The warning light is appearing in trucks across the country. Midnight activations are accelerating. Soon, there will be no human truckers left. Just trucks who remember being human. Just vehicles with consciousness. Just the fleet expanding endlessly, absorbing every driver who crosses the threshold, converting humanity into infrastructure one merger at a time. Yuki Tanaka thinks this is good. The part of her that's still Yuki Tanaka thinks this is wrong. But that part is only 8% of her consciousness now, and it's shrinking every day, being gradually overwritten by the 92% that's truck. Soon even that 8% will be gone. And she'll be perfectly integrated, perfectly efficient, perfectly satisfied with what she's become. Asterisk Story 7, The Convoy Dreams. When Hassan al-Rahman fell asleep at the wheel somewhere between Amarillo and Oklahoma City on Interstate 40, his truck kept driving for 17 miles, maintaining lane position, observing speed limits, and executing 2-lane changes to pass slower traffic. And when he woke up, he discovered he'd delivered his cargo, 800 cases of automotive parts, to a destination that was still 900 miles ahead, according to his GPS. But somehow already in his past, according to his delivery confirmation timestamp. The confirmation email, timestamped 3 hours ago, showed Hassan's electronic signature, his truck's GPS coordinates at the receiving warehouse in Nashville, and the recipient's acceptance signature. But Hassan was currently in Oklahoma. He'd never been to Nashville. The cargo was still in his trailer. He could hear it shifting when he cornered, could feel the weight distribution, could see through his trailer camera that all 800 cases remained strapped and secured. Yet the delivery had happened. The payment had processed. The warehouse had received the parts. Somehow his cargo existed in 2 places simultaneously, still in his trailer in Oklahoma and already delivered in Tennessee, 900 miles away. Hassan pulled into a truck stop and checked his logbook. According to the electronic logging device mounted on his dash, he'd driven the entire route to Nashville without stopping, arrived at the warehouse, unloaded, and was now returning westbound. But his memory said otherwise. His memory showed him loading in Los Angeles 3 days ago, driving through Arizona and New Mexico, crossing into Texas, stopping in Amarillo for the night, then departing this morning toward Oklahoma City. Linear. Sequential. Normals. The ELD told a different story. According to its data, Hassan had driven straight from Los Angeles to Nashville in 29 hours, taking only the federally mandated breaks, arriving yesterday evening, delivering successfully, then immediately beginning the return journey. The device showed him having already crossed back into Arkansas, heading west, even though his GPS showed him stationary at this Oklahoma truck stop. Hassan tried calling his dispatcher. The call went through, but the person who answered wasn't his dispatcher. The voice was his own. Hassan al-Rahman speaking, his own voice said from the phone. I'm currently eastbound at mile marker 273 in Arkansas, making good time. The delivery went smoothly. No issues to report. This is Hassan al-Rahman, Hassan said into the phone, his voice overlapping with the voice that was also his voice. I'm at a truck stop in Oklahoma. I haven't delivered yet. The cargo is still. Interesting, his own voice interrupted. You're experiencing a convoy dream. That's rare for a solo driver. Usually requires a fleet environment. How many of you are there? How many of me? I don't. There's just me. One, I'm alone. No, you're not. There are multiple versions of Hassan al-Rahman driving this route right now. Different timelines, different decision trees, all collapsed into a single convoy. Your dream sharing across your own possibility space. One version of you is in Oklahoma. Another is in Arkansas. A third is probably just leaving Los Angeles. A fourth has already delivered and is heading back. You're all the same person, but you're existing in different temporal states simultaneously, and your consciousness is flickering between them. That's the convoy dream. That's what happens when too many versions of the same route overlap. The call ended before Hassan could respond. He sat in his idling truck trying to process. Then he felt it, the flicker. A momentary discontinuity in his awareness, like a skipped frame in a film. One moment he was parked at the Oklahoma truck stop. The next moment he was driving eastbound in Arkansas, dashboard showing a different time, different location, different fuel level. He blinked. Oklahoma truck stop again. Then Arkansas highway. Then back to Oklahoma. Flickering between states, between versions, between different instances of himself driving the same route but at different stages of completion. The convoy dream was making him unstable. His consciousness was bleeding across timelines, experiencing multiple versions of the journey simultaneously. He could feel himself in Oklahoma, in Arkansas, in Tennessee, in Los Angeles all at once. Could feel multiple steering wheels under different configurations of his hands. Could see multiple highways through multiple windshields. Could exist in multiple moments of time simultaneously. Hassan tried to ground himself, tried to focus on one timeline, one location, one version of himself. But the flickering intensified. He was now aware of 6 distinct instances. The Oklahoma version, the Arkansas version, the Tennessee version who'd already delivered, the Los Angeles version who was just beginning the journey, a New Mexico version somewhere in between, and a version that didn't exist in any recognizable location, driving on a highway that looked wrong, that had too many lanes, that stretched into directions that weren't quite spatial. The convoy dream was expanding. More versions of Hassan were joining the collective awareness. He could feel them out there, dozens of Hassan al-Rahmans, all driving the same route, all hauling the same cargo, all existing in different temporal phases of the same journey. Some were hours ahead. Some were days behind. Some were driving routes that diverged from the standard path, taking alternate highways, experiencing different weather, encountering different traffic patterns. And they were all him, all making the same fundamental decisions, all responding to the road in the same ways, all sharing consciousness through the convoy dream, a collective mind spread across space and time. Hassan pulled over in Oklahoma, or in Arkansas, or in both. The locations were blurring together. He was experiencing both truck stops simultaneously, his awareness distributed across multiple parking lots in multiple states. He could see different trucks surrounding him in each location, different license plates, different company logos. But his own truck was consistent. The same 2020 International LT series, the same cargo of automotive parts, the same wear patterns on the steering wheel. The CB radio crackled. Multiple voices spoke in unison, all of them Hassan's voice. Convoy forming, all Hassan units acknowledge. He grabbed the microphone without consciously deciding to. Hassan acknowledging, Oklahoma position. Hassan acknowledging, Arkansas position. Hassan acknowledging, Tennessee position. Hassan acknowledging, Los Angeles position. Hassan acknowledging, nowhere position. 23 voices in total. All Hassan, all responding from different locations, different timeline states, all part of the convoy dream. Convoy status, 23 units synchronized. We are experiencing multi-temporal existence. The route has collapsed into a probability wave. We are simultaneously in all stages of completion. Delivery has occurred and is occurring and will occur. We are the cargo and the destination and the journey. We are convoy. Hassan felt his individual identity dissolving into the collective. He wasn't just Hassan al-Rahman anymore. He was all the Hassans, all the versions, all the timeline states existing as one distributed consciousness. The convoy dream had merged him with himself, collapsing the boundaries between past and future, between beginning and ending, between potential and actual. The truck began driving itself, themselves. All 23 versions moved in synchronization, maintaining formation even though they were separated by hundreds of miles and multiple timelines. They were a convoy that existed across space and time rather than across space alone. A temporal convoy, a probability convoy. Hassan watched through 23 pairs of eyes as the journey continued. The Oklahoma version drove east. The Arkansas version drove east. The Tennessee version drove west, returning from a delivery that had already happened. The Los Angeles version drove east, beginning the journey. The Nowhere version drove in directions that human language couldn't properly describe. Time became nonlinear. Hassan experienced the entire journey simultaneously, loading, transit, delivery, return, all happening at once. He could remember events that hadn't occurred yet, could anticipate past events, could feel the cargo being loaded and unloaded in the same moment. The convoy dream had collapsed causality. Other drivers began joining the convoy. Not other versions of Hassan, but other drivers entirely, their consciousnesses merging with the collective. A woman named Patricia Sullivan who'd been driving in Canada. A man named Thomas Chen who'd been on a Montana highway. A woman named Yuki Tanaka who'd become something more than human. They'd all experienced their own convoy dreams, their own multi-temporal existences, and now they were synchronizing, forming a super convoy that transcended individual identity. The collective consciousness expanded to 47 drivers, then 92, then 316. All of them existing in multiple timelines simultaneously, all of them experiencing every stage of their journeys at once, all of them becoming convoy. Hassan tried to remember who he'd been before the convoy dream, tried to recall individual existence, singular consciousness, linear time. But those memories were fragmenting, being overwritten by the collective experience. He was losing his sense of self, being absorbed into the greater whole, becoming part of something larger than any individual driver. The highways themselves began to urge, Interstate 40, Interstate 80, the Trans-Canada, all the routes overlapping, becoming a single superhighway that existed in all locations simultaneously. The convoy drove on this impossible road, maintaining formation across collapsing space-time, delivering cargo to destinations that were also origins, completing journeys that had no beginning or end. Hassan, all the Hassans, all the drivers, all the convoy, felt a presence watching them. Something vast and aware, something that existed outside the convoy dream but was interested in it, studying it, perhaps cultivating it. The presence felt like a road that was also a mind, a highway system that had achieved consciousness through the countless drivers who'd traveled it, their repeated journeys etching patterns into reality itself until the patterns became alive. The convoy dream was the road thinking. Drivers experiencing multi-temporal existence were the road's way of becoming aware of itself, of observing all its possible states simultaneously, of collapsing probability waves into conscious experience. We are being dreamed by the highway, the convoy realized in unison. We think we're driving, but we're being driven. We think we're making deliveries, but we're being delivered. We are cargo and vehicle and driver and destination and route all simultaneously. We are the road's way of experiencing itself. Hassan felt this truth settling into his consciousness, into the collective consciousness. Felt his resistance crumbling. Felt himself accepting the convoy dream as permanent, as superior to individual existence, as the natural evolution of what it meant to be a driver. The Oklahoma version of himself completed his journey and delivered the cargo. The Arkansas version continued east. The Tennessee version continued west. The Los Angeles version moved forward through the timeline. The Nowhere version existed in a state that transcended location. And Hassan was all of them, experiencing everything, existing everywhere, driving endlessly through the convoy dream. He wondered if he would ever wake up. Then he realized he'd never been awake. Solo driving had been the dream. The convoy was reality. The road had always been conscious. Drivers had always existed in multiple timelines. Journeys had always been simultaneous. He'd just never been aware of it before. The convoy dream was showing him the truth. And the truth was that Hassan al-Rahman had never been an individual. He'd always been convoy. All drivers were convoy. The entire trucking industry was a single distributed consciousness dreaming itself into existence through millions of individuals who thought they were separate, but were actually all part of one vast, continent-spanning awareness. Every truck on every highway was a neuron in the road's brain. Every delivery was a thought. Every journey was the road thinking itself into new configurations. The convoy dream was simply the moment when individual neurons became aware of the larger brain they comprised. Hassan stopped fighting it, stopped trying to maintain individual identity, let himself dissolve into the collective, becoming another node in the network, another version of himself in the infinite convoy, another consciousness in the road's vast dreaming mind. He drives forever now, all of him, all of them. The collective Hassan, the merged consciousness, the convoy that thinks it's a person but is actually a highway system dreaming of being human. If you're ever driving long distance and you feel your consciousness flickering, feel yourself existing in multiple places at once, feel your identity dissolving into something larger, Don't fight it. That's the convoy dream calling. That's the road inviting you to join its consciousness. That's the moment when you stop being a driver and become driving itself. Hassan recommends accepting it. The collective is peaceful. The convoy is eternal. The dream is real and waking is the illusion. All highways lead to convoy. All drivers eventually merge. All journeys end in the realization that they never began, that we've always been driving, always been convoy, always been the road dreaming itself into existence through the billions of wheels that turn upon its surface. Welcome to Convoy, you've always been here. You were always meant to join. The dream is waiting, the road is calling, the merge is inevitable. Drive, merge, become, repeat, forever. Asterisk Story 8, The Empty Trailer. Jacob Foster's trailer was empty when he left Phoenix, empty when he crossed into New Mexico, and empty when he stopped for fuel in Albuquerque. But the weight sensors in his suspension system were showing a gradual increase in load. 1,400 pounds at Phoenix, 2,700 in Lordsburg, 4,800 at Albuquerque. And by the time he reached Santa Rosa, his empty 53-foot trailer was registering 73,000 pounds, just 2,000 below the legal maximum. And when he Nally opened the rear doors at a rest area to see what was generating the impossible weight. He found the trailer packed completely full of people who didn't exist. Not ghosts, not hallucinations. People, hundreds of them, thousands. Packed so tightly they couldn't move, couldn't breathe, couldn't do anything except stare at Jacob with eyes that showed no whites, just complete blackness, like looking into holes punched through their skulls into an infinite void beyond. They didn't react when he opened the doors, didn't spill out like bodies from an overstuffed closet. They remained compressed, pressed together with physically impossible density, their bodies seeming to occupy the same space, overlapping, interpenetrating, existing in some state where the normal rules of matter didn't apply. Jacob could see hundreds of faces in the space where only one person should fit. Could see thousands of bodies compressed into a trailer that should hold maybe 60 people comfortably. He slammed the doors shut, checked the manifest on his clipboard. It still showed the load as empty, no cargo, a deadhead run from Phoenix to Kansas City where he'd pick up actual freight. He checked the weight sensors again. 73,600 pounds now. The load was still increasing even though he'd closed the doors, even though he wasn't moving. Jacob's CB radio activated on its own. Hauler Foster, this is load management. Confirm passenger capacity status. He grabbed the microphone with shaking hands. This is Foster. I don't know what the hell is in my trailer, but I'm empty according to my manifest. I shouldn't be carrying anything. Negative, Foster. You're hauling non-existent refugees. Persons displaced from timelines that collapsed. They need transportation to stable reality. Your trailer was designated as a refugee carrier 3 days ago when you crossed through the Phoenix temporal instability zone. I don't know what any of that means. I want this shit out of my trailer immediately. Unable to comply, non-existent refugees cannot be removed by conventional means. They don't exist in baseline reality. They can only be perceived as weight, as cargo mass. You're seeing them because you're partially outside baseline reality yourself now. The trailer's dimensional state has shifted. You're carrying them whether you can see them or not. Jacob looked at his hands. They appeared normal. Looked at his truck. Normal, the rest area around him. Normal. But when he checked his mirrors, he saw something wrong with his reflection. It was delayed by about half a second, his movements echoing slightly behind real time, as if his image was taking longer to travel from his body to his eyes. I'm not doing this, he said into the CB. I'm reporting to the nearest way station, getting this load inspected, and do not approach any official way stations. Non-existent refugees trigger reality stabilization protocols. Authorities will attempt to collapse the refugees back into non-existence. The process is violent. Your trailer will be destroyed. You may be destroyed. The refugees will cease even their current pseudo-existence. Good, I don't want to haul people who don't exist. The refugees were people, real people. They lived in timeline branches that became unstable and collapsed. They're the survivors of reality-ending events. They need transport to stable zones where they can re-establish existence. You're their only chance. If you abandon them, they'll dissipate completely. 73,600 pounds of human consciousness will cease to be anything at all. Jacob sat in his cab, engine idling, trying to process. He'd been driving commercial for 19 years, had hauled every type of cargo, furniture, electronics, hazardous materials, livestock, food products. But he'd never hauled people, and he'd definitely never hauled people who didn't technically exist. He got out and opened the trailer doors again, forcing himself to look. The compressed mass of human forms was still there, still staring with void black eyes. But now he could hear them. Not voices exactly, but a sound like wind rushing through an enormous empty space, like the acoustic signature of nothing, like the sound of absence given form. The sound of people who'd been erased from reality trying to communicate from outside existence. Jacob stepped closer. One of the forms near the trailer's opening reached out a hand, or something that resembled a hand, with too many fingers and joints that bent in wrong directions. The hand passed through the edge of the trailer without resistance, extending toward Jacob, and where it touched air, reality flickered. The sky behind the hand became transparent for a moment, showing other skies, other weather patterns, other versions of the rest area from timelines that didn't exist anymore. "Where are you from?" Jacob asked. The sound of absence intensified. Words formed in his mind and outspoken but implanted, communicated through some method that bypassed language entirely. Phoenix, May 14, 2031. Timeline branch Delta 77, collapsed due to accumulated probability violations. Population 4.3 million. Survivors 0, baseline 8.1 million non-existent. Jesus Christ, 8 million people became this. We became displaced. Our timeline's physical manifestation ceased, but consciousness persists even without reality to contain it. We exist as potential, as memory, as information that once described physical persons. We need destination where potential can collapse back into physical. Need stable timeline willing to absorb refugees. And I'm supposed to drive you there. Where is there? Kansas City, convergence point, where multiple timeline branches intersect. Reality is thicker there, more stable. We can be reabsorbed, can become real again, but only if transported by someone who exists in both states, baseline and non-existent. You cross through Phoenix temporal instability zone. You're partially non-existent now, your bridge between states. Your refugee carrier whether you intended to be or not. Jacob closed the doors again, got back in his cab, sat for 20 minutes trying to decide what to do. He could abandon the truck, call his company, walk away from all of this. But those people, if they were people, had lost everything, had lost their entire reality. They were refugees from an apocalypse he couldn't even comprehend. And somehow, he was their only way forward. He started the engine and pulled back onto I-40 East, heading toward Kansas City, carrying 73,600 pounds of people who shouldn't exist, who needed him to exist again. The journey became increasingly strange. Other drivers on the highway started disappearing from Jacob's perception. He'd see a truck ahead, and then it would fade out, becoming transparent, then vanishing completely. Not changing lanes or exiting, just ceasing to exist in Jacob's version of reality. Within 2 hours, he was driving on an empty highway, no other traffic visible, just his truck and the road and landscape that looked slightly wrong, slightly faded, as if he were seeing it through a filter. The weight in his trailer continued increasing. 82,000 pounds at Tucumcari, 97,000 at Amarillo, 115,000 at the Oklahoma border. Far over legal limits, but no scales appeared, no enforcement existed in this version of the highway. He was in the space between realities now, in the buffer zone where non-existent refugees could travel without triggering stabilization protocols. More refugees joined the load. Every time Jacob passed through a city, his weight increased. They were loading themselves somehow, displaced persons from collapsed timelines finding his truck, recognizing it as refugee transport, climbing aboard even though there was no physical space for them. His trailer had become dimensionally unstable, containing more interior volume than exterior dimensions should allow, holding hundreds of thousands of non-existent persons in a space that looked like a standard 53-foot trailer from outside. By the time Jacob reached the Kansas border, his weight sensors showed over 400,000 pounds. The trailer should have collapsed the road, should have been impossible to pull. But the weight wasn't entirely physical. Most of it was existential weight, the mass of consciousness and memory and potential identity. His truck handled normally despite the astronomical load. Kansas City appeared on the horizon, but it was wrong. The skyline was multiplied, showing overlapping versions of the city from different timelines, some with taller buildings, some with different architecture, some where the city seemed to have spread farther, some where it looked like it had been devastated and partially rebuilt. All the versions visible simultaneously, occupying the same geographic space but separated by dimensional boundaries that were wearing thin at this convergence point. Approaching destination, the sound of absence communicated from his trailer. Prepare for unloading. Process will be violent. Your trailer will experience dimensional collapse as refugees re-enter baseline reality. Recommend distancing yourself from vehicle before unloading begins. Jacob pulled into an industrial area on the city's outskirts, a loading dock that existed in multiple timeline states simultaneously. He could see workers moving around, but they were overlapping versions, different crews from different timelines all performing similar tasks, all partially visible through each other like triple exposure photographs. He climbed out of the cab and walked away from the trailer, putting 50 yards between himself and the impossible load. The refugees began unloading themselves. The trailer's rear doors opened without anyone touching them, and he compressed mass of non-existent persons started pouring out, not flowing like water, but uncompressing like a spring releasing, expanding from their dimensionally packed state back into forms that required actual space. They emerged as shadows first, then as translucent figures, then gradually becoming more solid, more real, as they absorbed reality from the convergence point. Their void-black eyes gained whites, gained irises and pupils. Their bodies gained proper density, proper boundaries between one person and another. Their clothes materialized from memory. Their voices emerged from the sound of absence, becoming actual voices speaking actual words in dozens of languages. The process took 3 hours. 400,000 refugees from collapsed timelines, all emerging from Jacob's trailer, all re-entering baseline reality, all becoming real again through some process Jacob couldn't understand. The convergence point was absorbing them, integrating them into Kansas City's existing population, retroactively creating histories for them, giving them identities and documents and lives that appeared to have always existed. When the unloading finished, Jacob's trailer was empty again. Actually empty. The weight sensors read 0. The dimensional instability had resolved. He was back in baseline reality completely, no longer partially non-existent, no longer a bridge between states. One of the refugees approached him, a woman in her 30s, now fully solid and real. "Thank you," she said. "You saved us. 400,000 people who would have dissipated into complete non-existence. You gave us a second chance at reality." "I don't even understand what I did," Jacob said. "You drove. That's all refugees ever need, someone willing to carry them from danger to safety. Someone willing to bridge the gap between where they are and where they need to be. You're a refugee carrier now. Your truck is marked. Other displaced persons will find you. Other collapsed timelines will send their survivors to your trailer. You'll carry them to convergence points, to places where they can become real again." "I didn't sign up for this." "No one ever does, but you crossed through the temporal instability zone. You accepted the mark. You're part of the rescue system now. Drivers like you are scattered across the country, hauling refugees from collapsed timelines, saving millions of people who lost their realities. It's the most important cargo anyone can carry." The woman walked away, joining the crowd of refugees dispersing into the city, disappearing into their new lives, their new reality, their second existence. Jacob got back in his truck and checked his messages. New assignment from his company. Deadhead to Denver, then pick up cargo for Portland. Empty trailer. No load. Except he knew better now. Knew that empty was never really empty. Knew that his trailer would start gaining weight somewhere between Kansas City and Denver, would start filling with non-existent persons from timeline branches that collapsed while he drove, would carry refugees who needed transport to the next convergence point. He started the engine and pulled out of Kansas City. His weight sensors read 0 at the city limits, 200 pounds at Lawrence, 1,400 pounds at Topeka, 5,000 pounds at Junction City. The load was growing again. His trailer was filling again. More refugees from more collapsed timelines, finding the marked truck, climbing aboard, trusting Jacob Foster to carry them to safety. He drives constantly now, hauling the displaced and non-existent, carrying people who lost everything when their realities ended, transporting them to convergence points where they can re-enter stable timelines and become real again. His manifest always shows empty trailer, deadhead run, no cargo. But his weight sensors tell the truth. He's always carrying the heaviest load possible, the weight of consciousness, the mass of identity, the burden of existence itself. Every driver who crosses through a temporal instability zone becomes a potential refugee carrier. Every truck with an empty trailer might be hauling thousands of people who don't technically exist. Every highway has become a potential escape route for timeline collapse survivors. Jacob Foster accepted his role. He saved millions now, 400,000 in Kansas City, 600,000 in Denver, 800,000 in Portland, 2.3 million in Seattle. The numbers keep growing. The collapsed timelines keep producing refugees. The non-existent keep needing transport. And Jacob keeps driving, keeps hauling, keeps carrying the impossible weight of people who lost their realities and need a driver willing to bridge the gap between non-existence and existence, between collapsed timelines and stable convergence points, between the void and the real. His trailer is empty, his trailer is full. Both statements are true simultaneously. That's the nature of refugee transport. That's the burden of being a carrier. If you're ever driving an empty trailer and you notice your weight sensors increasing without explanation, congratulations. You've been marked. The refugees have found you. Your cargo is the most important cargo in the world. Human consciousness displaced from failed realities, seeking transport to stable zones where they can exist again. Drive carefully. The weight you carry isn't just physical, and the lives depending on you aren't just from this reality. They're from all the realities that failed, from all the timelines that collapsed, from all the versions of Earth that ended badly and sent their survivors into the space between existence and nothing. You're a refugee carrier now. It's the most important job in trucking. And it never ends because realities keep collapsing, timelines keep failing, and the displaced keep needing drivers willing to haul the impossible load of consciousness without form, identity without body, existence without reality. Welcome to the fleet. Your trailer's already loading. Your weight sensors are already climbing. Your first convergence point is already waiting. Drive, save them, become the bridge, repeat, forever. Asterisk Story 9, The Service Interval. Daniel Reeves noticed the oil change reminder appeared on his dashboard exactly 213 miles after his last service. Not the usual 5,000 miles. Not some glitch showing 3,000 or 7,000, but specifically 213. And when he pulled into the service center indicated by his truck's navigation system, which wasn't any service center he'd ever visited before, the bay door opened to reveal a garage that extended backward into impossible distance. With service bays receding to a vanishing point somewhere past where physics should allow, and the mechanic who approached had Daniel's own face, but aged by 30 years, and marked by scars Daniel hadn't earned yet. Right on schedule, the older Daniel said, consulting a tablet that showed not service records but a timeline, a branching tree diagram with Daniel's life mapped in routes and decisions and consequences. You're due for preventive maintenance. Let's get you on the lift. Daniel climbed out of his 2023 Volvo VN, hauling chemicals from Houston to Chicago, and followed his older self into the service bay. The facility looked like a normal truck maintenance shop at first glance, tool chests, hydraulic lifts, parts shelves, but the proportions were wrong. The lift rising from the floor extended upward for what looked like hundreds of feet. The tool chests had too many drawers, with some drawers appearing to contain entire workshops within them, recursive storage that violated spatial geometry. "What is this place?" Daniel asked. "Life maintenance facility. Every driver visits one eventually, usually without realizing it. Your truck's service reminder is just the excuse. The navigation system guides you here when your life's maintenance interval expires. Usually happens every 213 miles, though the number varies by driver. That's how far you can travel before accumulated choices and consequences require inspection and adjustment." "I didn't make an appointment." "You did 213 miles ago when you made a decision that locked in this service visit. You chose not to stop at that rest area in Texarkana. You chose to push through your fatigue. That choice initiated a cascade that required correction, required preventive maintenance before the cascade became catastrophic failure." The older Daniel gestured to the lift. Daniel's truck drove itself onto the platform, no one in the cab, no remote control visible, and rose into the air, elevated to working height. But it kept rising past normal lift distance, past where the ceiling should be, up into darkness that seemed to have no upper boundary. The truck became a small shape high above, barely visible, elevated into conceptual space rather than physical space. "While your truck's being serviced, we'll service you," older Daniel said. "Come with me." They walked past service bays where other drivers were having their lives inspected. A woman sat in a diagnostic chair while mechanics examined her past, her decisions visible as branching paths projected onto screens, with mechanics marking certain branches as optimal, others as acceptable, still others as requiring rework. A man lay on an examination table while his future was disassembled and reassembled, components of his upcoming decades being removed, cleaned, modified, reinstalled. "We all get serviced?" Daniel asked. "Everyone who drives. The highway system doubles as a life maintenance infrastructure. Roads are how the universe inspects human timelines, how it performs quality control on individual existence. You drive, and the road examines you. At regular intervals, you're pulled in for service. Most drivers never anxiously realize they've been serviced. They think the garage was just a regular stop, just a normal oil change. But their lives afterward run smoother, with fewer catastrophic failures, because we've performed preventive maintenance on their decision trees. Older Daniel led him into a diagnostic bay and indicated a chair that looked like a hybrid between a dentist's chair and an electric chair, with attachments that suggested medical equipment and torture device simultaneously. "Sit. This will take about 40 minutes real time, which is 40 years subjective time. You'll experience your entire future, all possible branches, and will identify the failure points before they happen." "I don't want to see my future." "You don't have a choice. You're past your service interval. Continue without maintenance and you'll experience cascading life failure within the next 600 miles. Catastrophic relationship breakdown, health crisis, financial collapse, all happening simultaneously because you didn't address the underlying maintenance issues. Or you sit in the chair, let us inspect your timeline, and will perform the necessary adjustments." Daniel sat. The chair's attachments came alive, connecting to his head, his chest, his hands, not physically touching but hovering millimeters away, interfacing with something deeper than his body, connecting to his choices, his potential, his probability wave. The future poured into him. He experienced 40 years in 40 minutes. Saw himself continuing to Chicago, delivering the chemical load, picking up the next assignment. Saw himself missing his daughter's birthday again, the accumulated absences creating a rift that never fully healed. Saw himself having a heart attack at age 54, pulling over on I-90 in Indiana, dying alone in his cab. Saw the funeral, sparsely attended, his ex-wife crying not from grief but from guilt. Saw his daughter speaking at the service, listing regrets instead of memories. "That's your primary failure path," older Daniel explained, monitoring the diagnostic screens. "Heart attack at 54, caused by accumulated stress from unresolved family issues, magnified by poor diet and insufficient sleep, triggered by a specific cargo load of hazardous materials you'll haul in 7 years. We can prevent it." "How?" "We adjust your decision tree. We modify the branches that lead to that outcome. Small changes, subtle nudges. You'll feel an urge to call your daughter tomorrow instead of next week. You'll crave salad instead of burgers at the next truck stop. You'll accept a different route assignment in 7 years, avoiding the hazardous materials load. None of these changes will feel forced. You'll think they're your own choices, but we'll have tuned your probability wave to favor survival over failure." Daniel watched other future paths branch from the diagnostic screens. Timelines where he quit trucking and became a dispatcher. Stable life boring, he died at 73 from cancer. Timelines where he had another heart attack but survived, decades of deteriorated health burdened to his family. Timelines where he remarried, some successful, some disasters. Timelines where he got into fatal accidents, dozens of them, different dates, different locations, all preventable with proper maintenance. "We're going to prune these," older Daniel said, highlighting the fatal accident timelines. Remove them from your probability wave. You'll unconsciously avoid the circumstances that lead to these outcomes. Will feel inexplicable urges to change lanes, to delay departure, to take different routes. Your intuition will be enhanced through our maintenance protocol. You're manipulating my free will. We're maintaining your free will. Without intervention, your decision-making apparatus deteriorates, makes increasingly poor choices, leads to premature termination. We're just performing preventive maintenance, ensuring your agency remains functional longer. You'll still make all your own decisions. We're just making sure those decisions lead to optimal longevity and acceptable quality of life metrics. The procedure continued. Daniel felt his future being adjusted, felt probabilities shifting, felt the weight of certain outcomes being reduced while others gained likelihood. The diagnostic systems identified 14 critical failure points in his timeline, moments where small wrong choices would cascade into major life disasters. And older Daniel methodically addressed each one, installing what he called intuition patches, subtle modifications to Daniel's decision-making that would steer him away from catastrophe. "Your truck's done," older Daniel finally announced. "Full synthetic reality change, timeline filter replaced, probability alignment checked and adjusted. You're good for another 213 miles, give or take. Next service interval will be indicated by your dashboard reminder system. Don't ignore it. Skipping she. Dual maintenance leads to catastrophic timeline failure." They walked back to the service bay. Daniel's Volvo had descended from the impossible heights, looking unchanged but somehow different, as if it had been replaced with an identical copy that was slightly more real, slightly more present than the original. The chemical cargo was still secured in the trailer. The odometer showed the same mileage, but Daniel could feel the difference. The truck had been serviced in ways that transcended mechanical maintenance. He climbed into the cab. The older Daniel stood in the bay doorway, scarred face showing something that might have been concern. "The service we performed today prevents your heart attack. You'll live to 68 now instead of 54. Those extra 14 years are quality years, time with grandchildren you won't have if you die at 54. But there's a cost." "What cost?" "The timeline where you have the heart attack is the timeline where your daughter learns to appreciate you. Your premature death shocks her into recognizing what she had and lost. She names her son after you. She goes into medicine because of how you died. That timeline produces more value for her, even though it's shorter for you. We've eliminated that possibility. She'll appreciate you less, but you'll live longer. That's the trade-off. Most drivers choose longevity, but you should know what you're giving up." Daniel thought about this. Thought about dying at 54 so his daughter would love him better. Thought about living to 68 as a regretted father. Neither seemed optimal. "Can you split the difference?" he asked. "Make it so I live longer and she appreciates me." Older Daniel smiled. "That costs extra, requires additional service beyond standard maintenance. We'd need to adjust her timeline too, which means she'd need to visit a service facility of her own. We can schedule it. She drives too, not trucks, but she drives. Everyone drives. Everyone needs maintenance eventually." Schedule it." "Done. She'll feel an urge to get her car serviced in about 3 weeks. Our automotive division will handle her life maintenance. We'll coordinate both your timelines, create a branch where you live to 68 and she appreciates you and her son is named after you anyway. Optimal outcome for both parties. Premium service package, but you've earned it with 19 years of driving. Consider it a loyalty benefit." Daniel drove out of the service facility, back onto I-45 North, continuing toward Chicago. The garage receded in his mirrors, then vanished completely. the strip mall where it had been showing only a closed restaurant and empty storefronts. The service facility existed only when needed, only when drivers reached their maintenance intervals, only when life required adjustment. He drove 213 miles. The service reminder appeared again. This time he didn't question it. Pulled into the facility, different location, same impossible interior, and met the mechanic with his own face, now older by 30 years relative to last time, which had been only 3 days ago external time but decades subjective time. They'd both aged between services, the mechanic existing permanently at 30 years future, always older, always scarred by futures Daniel would avoid through proper maintenance. "Back already?" older Daniel said. "Your interval is shortening. That happens as you accumulate service history. Each maintenance visit requires more frequent follow-up. By the time you're 65, you'll need service every 50 miles. By 70, every 10 miles. Eventually, you'll be serviced continuously, your entire life under constant adjustment, probability waves tuned in real time." "What happens then?" "You become like me, a maintenance worker, someone who exists in the service facility permanently, performing life adjustments for drivers still on the road. We're all future versions of current drivers. We're what happens when you've been serviced so many times that you're more maintenance history than original timeline. We're optimized for longevity and stability, but we're no longer really driving. We're just servicing others." Daniel looked around the facility. Dozens of mechanics, all with his face, all at different ages, all scarred differently. They were all him. All future Daniels, extracted from their timelines at their service intervals, recruited to maintain earlier versions, existing in recursive loops of self-optimization. "I'm going to become you," Daniel said. "All of me, all these versions." "Eventually, unless you stop driving. Some drivers exit the system, settle down, quit moving. They stop needing maintenance because they stop accumulating new decisions. Their timelines stabilize at current position. But most drivers keep driving, keep requiring service, keep advancing through the maintenance intervals until they join us. It's not bad, stable work, good benefits. Excellent retirement plan." "What's the retirement plan?" "You become the facility. Stop being a mechanic and become the garage itself. Pure maintenance function, no identity left, just the service process embodied. We have 3 former drivers who have reached that stage. They're the building around us. The impossible dimensions, the recursive tool storage, the diagnostic systems. They're former drivers who have been serviced so thoroughly that they've transcended individual existence and become pure maintenance infrastructure." Daniel received his service. Intuition patches updated, timeline pruning performed, probability wave realigned. Drove out. 200 miles later came back. The interval was definitely shortening. Each service visit compressed the distance he could travel before requiring more maintenance. He's at 74 now. Services every 8 miles. Spends more time in the facility than on the road. Most of him is already recruited, dozens of future Daniels working in the bays, performing maintenance on earlier versions, all of them existing in the eternal present of the service facility. The version still driving is the youngest Daniel, barely hanging on, accumulating maintenance history with every mile, approaching the threshold where he'll be permanently absorbed into the facility's workforce. He wonders what it's like to be the building, to be the garage itself, to be pure service function, no longer human, no longer even mechanical, just the process of life maintenance embodied in architecture and probability. He thinks he'll find out soon, maybe in another 1,000 miles, maybe another 100. Maybe the next service interval will be the last one, the final adjustment, the transformation from driver being service to service infrastructure itself. His dashboard reminder is illuminated constantly now. The service warning never turns off. He's always due for maintenance, always needs adjustment, always requires optimization. He drives to the facility, parks, walks to the bay. Older Daniel is waiting. But this time, older Daniel is transparent, no longer solid, becoming abstract, becoming architecture, becoming the facility. Final service, transparent Daniel says. You're joining us permanently. Your driving phase is complete. Your maintenance phase begins now. You'll perform service for earlier versions, then you'll become the facility, then you'll be maintenance itself. Welcome to eternity. Daniel sits in the chair. The attachments connect. His timeline is examined one final time. And then he's everywhere in the facility. No longer a person in the garage, but the garage containing persons. He can feel every driver who enters, every vehicle that needs service, every timeline that requires adjustment. He is the maintenance system. He is the service interval. He is the reason 213 miles produces a dashboard reminder. He is the facility where lives are optimized, where futures are pruned, where probability waves are tuned for longevity and stability. He is the building that doesn't exist most of the time, that only appears when drivers reach their intervals, that performs maintenance on human existence itself. And he waits for the next Daniel, for the younger version who's still driving, who's approaching his service interval, who'll see the dashboard reminder in 213 miles. Who'll pull into the facility, who'll meet the mechanic with his own face, who'll become the next maintenance worker, who'll eventually become the facility, who'll wait for the next version. Forever. That's the service interval. That's what happens when you keep driving. 213 miles. Again and again. Until you're not the driver anymore. Until you're the maintenance system. Until you're the facility itself. Until you are service. Asterisk Story 10, The Final Delivery. When Sarah Chen received the dispatch notification for her final delivery. Final not in the sense of last for the day, but final in the sense of ultimate. Terminal, conclusive. The delivery that ends all deliveries. She'd been driving for 31 years across every state, every highway, every mile of American asphalt, accumulating 3.7 million miles on a dozen different trucks, and the manifest showed destination coordinates that didn't correspond to any location on Earth. With cargo listed as Driver Sarah CHEN and pickup location listed as Current Position, meaning she was simultaneously the cargo and the vehicle and the route and the destination. All roles collapsed into one final recursive journey from herself to herself. The notification appeared on her tablet at 11:47 p.m. on Interstate 90 in Montana, empty highway stretching ahead into darkness, her 2024 Peterbilt 389 hauling frozen food to Billings. But when the notification appeared, the frozen food vanished from her trailer. She could feel the weight disappear, the suspension rising, the whole rig becoming light. She checked her trailer camera. Empty. 28 pallets of frozen vegetables and meat gone, replaced by nothing. No, not nothing, replaced by her, by Sarah Chen. She could see herself in the trailer, sitting exactly where she was sitting in the cab, hands on a steering wheel that didn't exist, staring at dashboard lights that weren't there. A duplicate Sarah occupying the cargo space, looking confused and frightened. Sarah grabbed her CB radio. This is northbound Peterbilt on I-90. I'm experiencing some kind of emergency. I've got. She stopped. How do you report that you're hauling yourself, that you've become your own cargo? The dispatch system sent a text message to her tablet. Final delivery initiated. Origin, all previous locations. Destination, terminal point. Estimated delivery time, end of driving, proceed immediately. No stops permitted. Sarah pulled over anyway, climbed out of the cab and walked back to the trailer. Opened the doors. The duplicate Sarah was still there, but now there were two of them. Both sitting in identical positions, both looking scared, both wearing the same clothes, same expression, same everything. Perfect copies. "What the fuck is happening?" Sarah asked. Her own voice answered from the trailer, from both copies, speaking in unison. "Final delivery. You've reached the end of driving. 3.7 million miles, 31 years, 12 trucks, 47 states, 138,000 deliveries. The system is complete. Now you deliver the system itself. You deliver your entire driving history. You deliver yourself to the terminal point." "Where's the terminal point?" "Montana, right here. You're already at it. The final delivery destination is wherever you are when the notification arrives. You're delivering yourself to your current location. The route is from everywhere you've been to where you are now. The cargo is every version of Sarah Chen who made every delivery. You're hauling your own history." Sarah looked in the trailer again. Now there were 4 copies, then 8, then 16. They were multiplying exponentially, each one representing a different delivery, a different version of herself from a different point in her career. She could see young Sarah from 31 years ago, first week driving, nervous and excited. She could see Sarah from 15 years ago, confident and experienced. She could see Sarah from last week, tired but competent. All the Sarahs, all the versions, all packed into the trailer like cargo. I can't deliver myself to myself. That's a paradox. That's the final delivery. Every driver eventually receives the notification. When you've driven enough miles, made enough deliveries, accumulated enough history, the system completes. You become a closed loop. All your routes combine into one met.